All we've got to do now is to start pumping.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I am your host, Marcus Whitman. Really excited about today's show. We're going to do a little recapping of the 2020 NFL Draft, doing our top 5 classes of the 2020 Draft, and then we're going to do our Week 12 recap and get into the mailbag. But first, this show is brought to you by my Patreon. That is patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy, where you can not just support the show, but become a part of it by getting access to the Fully Inflated Football Podcast mailbag for just $1 a month. Become a part of the mailbag show to get your questions in at the end of the show. Also, get exclusive content on Patreon. Just $5 a month gets you access to my weekly NFL picks every week, as well as my full draft board come draft season. Speaking of draft season, the top tier for the Patreon levels is the Draft Insider Package. We are just 1 month away from college film room breakdowns there on Patreon. Really excited for draft season just around the corner. But you'll also get access to team-specific 7-round mock drafts as we lead up to the draft. We get a full 7-round mock draft done for each team in the league. So lots of great stuff on Patreon. If you want to support the show, become a part of the show, and get exclusive content in the process, great stuff going on over there on Patreon. It is the 2nd of the month, so it's a great time to sign up. So thank you to everyone who has already shown your support and anyone considering support in the future. Let's get into the show. We got a big topic here, recapping some NFL draft stuff from the 2020 draft, and then a lot of great stuff to recap from an interesting Week 12 as well. So we're going to start with the top 5 rookie classes from the 2020 NFL Draft, and I do have an honorable mention here, and that's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals, who obviously the draft is all about finding that quarterback, and they did. They had the first overall pick. It wasn't very difficult, but anytime you get a quarterback like Joe Burrow, you're going to look back on that class and say, yeah, they won the draft. Ultimately, if you get that guy, if you get that high-end franchise quarterback, dare I say elite quarterback with Joe Burrow, nothing else really matters. But they did do some nice stuff after that. They take T. Higgins in the 2nd round. He looks like at least a really good number 2 possession outside receiver. They take a couple linebackers that have shown some promise in Logan Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gether, and then even like their late round picks have been contributors. Khalid Kareem has been a good early down run defender for them out of Notre Dame, and Hakeem Adeniji has actually been playing some tackle for them and not getting lost, which is saying a lot for a Bengals offensive tackle. So they had a decent class. I will say, despite getting Adeniji, I don't think he's got some crazy high upside. I did criticize them for not really addressing the offensive line, and that led to Joe Burrow getting hurt. They had the worst offensive line in the league this year. So I would still say that is the thing keeping them out of the top 5 here, but overall a good class for the Bengals. So then the real list here, starting at number 5, how can you do this without the Green Bay Packers? I mean, you get your number 2 receiver. This was such a deep receiver class, and this team clearly needed a receiver. So you take Jordan Love. You get that high-impact rookie at the receiver position in this great receiver class. You go to the 2nd round. I mean, it just keeps getting better. You take your starting fullback in A.J. Dillon. He's only played like 8 snaps this year, but he's looked really good when he's been out there. You take your backup fullback in Josiah DeGuara in the 3rd round. I mean, what an impact he's been. He did tear his ACL, but at least you have your backup fullback coming back next year. You got to skip ahead to the 5th round. You get Kamal Martin. I mean, he's the best player of the crop here. He's got like 13 tackles this year. He is just a future all-pro linebacker. And then you go 3 straight offensive linemen in the 6th round. This was already like the deepest, best, one of the top offensive lines in the league, but at least you have those guys on the roster. So just an elite class all around, impact from start to end for the Green Bay. I can't do this anymore. Obviously, the Green Bay Packers, who I gave an F come draft day, are not going to be making the top 5 list here. If Jordan Love works out, it won't be the end of the world. But man, what a colossal disaster the Packers front office pulled off this offseason. Luckily, they have Aaron Rodgers and a good head coach to save their ass. But let's get into the real list here. Number 5 is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm going to be honest, man, this was a tough list to come up with. For one, you look at the defensive side of the ball, it's a really rough year for young defenders. Practice time is down. They had less time this summer. Training camp was non-existent. So that's basically half of the draft is just really hard to evaluate right now. I would say there's maybe 10, 20 defensive rookies making a decent impact in the league right now, so that definitely made this list harder. But the Chiefs, to me, pulled off a really good draft class. So they do take a running back in the first round, but it was the last pick in the first round, which is going to give you 5 cheap years of a really good running back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was always going to be a star, especially on a team here like Kansas City. Now, he hasn't exactly taken the bull by the horns and become a top 10 back by any stretch of the imagination, but he's been good when they go to him, and he's going to stay fresh due to the Le'Veon Bell signing. So he's looked good, but that really is not why they're making the list. They take Willie Gay in the back of the second round, and he's a guy that is one of these learning curve rookie defenders. This is a linebacker position that requires a lot of learning curves. The top 2 linebackers in this class, Kenneth Murray, Patrick Queen, I think they have great futures, but they've had their ups and downs this year. It's been no different for Willie Gay, but Willie Gay was one of the highest upside players in this class. The Chiefs are a team that is willing to take a chance on a player like him who had off-field character concerns. Now, what were those concerns? He punched a guy in practice once. Who hasn't punched a guy in practice? I mean, come on. And academic stuff that led to him getting suspended. Well, he doesn't have to, take chemistry exams playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. So he's been on the field. He stayed out of trouble, which to me was never a huge question mark with Willie Gay. But when he's been on the field, he's been a little hit or miss, but he's really flashed. I think he's got a really bright future. Then they take Lucas Niang in the third round. We haven't seen him play yet. That's a credit to the Chiefs for finding a veteran in Mike Remmers. I think Niang was a great pick at the time. He's going to develop here. And the fact that he hasn't had to get thrown out there as a rookie is really good stuff for the Kansas City Chiefs. But the highlight here, the reason they make this list, is L'Jarius Sneed. Hell of a find. The Chiefs are just showing why they are the best team in football, because they have the 3 pillars of the organization, which is going to become a theme for this episode. You've got coach, quarterback, something's going on out there. I don't know if that's going to show up on the mic or not, but wee you. Anyway, coach, quarterback, and front office, and the Chiefs have all 3. And this L'Jarius Sneed was just another great example of this Chiefs organization being great scouts and knowing how to team build. Key position at corner. They identify him as a safety at La Tech. I like this guy. I had a 3rd to a 4th round grade on him, which was higher than most had. I had him pegged as the type of athlete that you want to take a flyer on late day 2, early day 3. He just popped on film when I watched him. He flies around. He had decent ball skills and really good tackler. With his athletic traits, as a guy that had positional flexibility, kind of reminded me of a young, raw Byron Jones, just really nice prospect. And the Chiefs take him, convert him to corner, and he's been one of the top, if not the top, rookie corners in the entire league. So he's been outstanding. Did miss a lot of time for injuries, but when he's been out there, he's been quite possibly their best corner. And then they're even getting a contribution from Mike Dana, who was a 5th-round pick. He's been kind of a nice early down run defender for them. So really nice class for the Chiefs. I don't know if any of these guys are going to be, well, that's not fair. I think Willie Gay and L'Jarius Sneed have a lot of upside, but what I'm saying is none of them have been like elite contributors early on, but just a really nice steady class. I think those 5 picks, considering they're a team that had the back pick of every round, they did a really nice job. So I gave the Chiefs an A at the time after the draft, and I would stick with that. They had a really nice draft. Then the Carolina Panthers are going to take the number 4 spot. Lots of Jeremy Chin hype right now after that huge game against the Vikings. He is looking like a young Jamal Adams, and he is the highlight of this class for sure. Now, the Panthers kind of historically went all defense. And when you look at the Panthers, who have had a pretty surprising season, a lot of people had this team pegged as a Trevor Lawrence contender, myself included. The offense was always going to be pretty stable with Teddy Bridgewater and a good surrounding unit there, and that's proved to be true. But the reason the Panthers, I think, have exceeded their expectations is in large part because of this rookie class, along with some other contributors on the defensive side of the ball. The Panthers have been a really surprising defensive unit to me. I thought they were going to be bottom 3 in the league. They've been solid. They've been average to slightly below average, but that's a lot better than expectations. So they take Derek Brown in the first round. Had a rough start, but again, it's a really rough year for rookies. I wouldn't write any defensive player out after this season. It's just with COVID, you don't have crowd noise, especially for a D lineman. It's hard. You have no silent counts. You don't get that adrenaline rush from the home field. It's just a difficult year for defenders all across the board for a large variety of reasons. But Derek Brown has come on as of late. I still probably wouldn't make that pick if I were them. I just don't value nose tackles that highly. But still, I think he's a good player. I thought he was a top 20 player. It was a tiny bit of a reach. I would have traded down, maybe try to get him later, but not the end of the world. He looks like probably going to be a very solid defensive tackle. They take Yetur Gross-Matos, who was definitely raw coming out. We've seen some of those learning curves, but he's had some good games. He's had some good contribution to this defense. The Weatherly signing has been just a disaster. So to get Gross-Matos to play well has been nice for them. And then Jeremy Chinn, like I said, he looks like a young Jamal Adams in that he's going to fly around the field. He can rush the passer, play the run. He can drop into coverage. He can do a little bit of everything. Not a guy I want playing a ton of free safety. He's got some lapses in coverage, but the athletic traits show. He can man up tight ends, running backs out of the backfield. If used correctly, which this defense is doing, he is going to be a really nice player for them. And that was always going to be a boom or bust pick. And I think we're seeing the boom outcome with Jeremy Chinn, which is just huge. You have a couple of interesting young defenders, Troy Pride, Kenny Robinson in the secondary. Again, kind of swing for the fences picks. Troy Pride was a raw, athletically gifted corner. He just had his best game of the season against the Vikings. So he's intriguing. Kenny Robinson at safety is not... Yikes. I don't know what that was. Kenny Robinson, coming out of the XFL, was kind of kicked out of West Virginia, a high upside boomer bust safety pick. We'll see what he can do. Trey Boston has not been good at that free safety spot. I don't know if Robinson's healthy and all that, but I wouldn't mind to see what Kenny Robinson can offer there and see if you might have a safety duo to lean on going into next year with Chinn and Robinson potentially. And their 6th and 7th round picks have been nice too. That's a big reason they make this list. Bravion Roy has been a contributor as a run defender. I liked him. I compared him to Tim Settle in Washington, who I really like. And then a Stanley Thomas Oliver has actually been a pretty solid rookie corner. He's been getting on the field lately and looking pretty good. He's kind of this lengthy he's not super athletic, but he's a lengthy physical corner who's actually played and played pretty well as a 7th round pick. So all defense for the Panthers. They loaded up on offense through free agency, through the draft in previous seasons, and it looks to me like they have a very foundational core to kind of build off here, which was clearly their plan, and I give them a lot of credit. Like, this was a really nice plan of attack. I have just raved about the Panthers organization, so I think this was a great start for this new regime that I'm a big fan of. Honestly, I'm just waiting on a player that I can really fall in love with here, and I'm gonna cop a Panthers jersey because you guys know I love well-run organizations, and I think from Tepper down through the coaching staff, I am buying in to the Panthers. We've got some more Panthers talk later on. Then number 3, the Minnesota Vikings. By the way, I gave the Panthers a B+ grade at the time. I would probably bump that up to an A. Then the Minnesota Vikings are number 3, and this is really just Justin Jefferson, who was either the first or second best pick of the draft. Obviously, Justin Herbert was a phenomenal pick for the Chargers. But Justin Jefferson, pound for pound, has been the best rookie in the NFL by a long stretch of the imagination. Because obviously Justin Herbert's been great, but Herbert hasn't been a top 5 player at his position on a weekly basis like Justin Jefferson has been. He has been everything Stephon Diggs was, potentially more. It's been an amazing transition from a slot receiver at LSU to a legitimate vertical threat on the outside who can beat man-to-man coverage and beat press coverage, which was kind of the question mark. He was this lengthy, kind of scrappy slot receiver at LSU. He comes out and kind of surprises everyone, running that 4-4-4, getting coined on this channel as Justin Jeff 4-4-4 son. And it just translates. He's got the length, all of the athletic traits, the speed to translate to an outside receiver, which is something I talked about come draft time. And I really liked Justin Jefferson because despite the fact that he didn't show it at LSU, as I said at the time, there really was no reason to believe that his skill set would not translate as an outside receiver. And it absolutely has for the Vikings. So he has been the best rookie. I would say Justin Herbert is the offensive rookie of the year because of quarterback demand and all the importance of that position. But Justin Jefferson has been such a great pick. But it's not just them. You have Jeff Gladney, who was a nice find for the Vikings, was a first-round pick here. The cornerback was a huge need for this team. We had a very strong feeling that they would be going corner early in this draft. The thing is, Zimmer has never liked young rookie corners. He's stayed away from that. He runs a complex scheme with this defense, and he wanted someone that was going to be comfortable running a variety of coverages, cover 4, cover 3, man, press. It can play in the slot, can do anything. And Jeff Gladney was always kind of that pick of this guy might not have the highest upside, but Zimmer's going to love this guy. He's physical, he's smart, and versatile. He can fit wherever that biggest need shows up for the Vikings, he can play that. And as of late, that's been slot corner. And Jeff Gladney, who is a smaller guy, these 5'10", 5'11" corners traditionally do get slotted into the slot just because they don't have that length to break up passing lanes, play press coverage on the outside. So Jeff Gladney has been the slot corner here, and he has a ton of upside as a traditional slot corner. He's super tough, tackles well, just a physical guy, so he's going to contribute as a run defender, and he's quick, so he can disrupt RPOs, quick slants, bubble screens. Like, he is going to be all over the field, and I think they really found a high-caliber slot corner, which to use a first-round pick on that is a bit of a reach, but if he's one of the best in the league, that's going to work out. So he's still growing in coverage, but he's shown a lot in the last few weeks, and I think definitely learning. Slot corner is a difficult position coverage-wise to play as a rookie. But he looks, at this stage in his career, like a very young, I don't want to say Chris Harris quite yet, but I think he has that kind of upside as a slot corner. I don't know if he'll reach that or not, obviously, but just looks like a good pick. Then you have Ezra Cleveland. He's another interesting kind of experiment here for the Vikes. Super light tackle prospect coming out of Boise State. I question his sort of, not necessarily toughness. I think he's probably a pretty tough dude, but he didn't play all that tough. He let blocks go. He did not have the best anchor as a pass protector. And for that reason, I like this pick and he's a really athletic, mobile dude. Keep that in mind. So I liked this fit. They had a lot of success with a similar prospect in their right tackle, who I always struggle with his name, even though he's one of my favorite players in the league. Their right tackle for the Vikings. I always do this. Brian O'Neill. There we go. I liked that future outlook duo. They run this outside zone scheme that really relies on those tackles and all the offensive linemen, but the tackles to be able to get on the move and block in space. And I think Ezra Cleveland has a ton of potential there if he could refine some of that anchor and pass protection and become a more physical player at the next level. But they have had to play him at guard because they had hot garbage at that position. And he's stepped into guard, and he hasn't been great. Like I said, he doesn't have the best anchor. He hasn't been the best pass protector, but he's run blocked well, as you would expect for a mobile guy in this scheme to do at guard. But I really like his upside at tackle. You've got the left tackle there, another name I struggle with. Let's just keep rolling. But the veteran at left tackle, the Iowa guy, he is probably on the way out. And I do wonder, are the Vikings going to do what most NFL teams do and be stubborn and say, well, Cleveland was fine at guard. Let's not stir the pot there. Let's try someone else at tackle. That, to me, diminishes both Ezra Cleveland's upside as a player, but also the value that you used, that second-round pick on a tackle. To draft an average guard with that pick would be an issue. So we'll see in time what they do there. I think the Vikings are a smart organization. If they are smart, they will kick Cleveland out to tackle next year. But again, historically, teams have been really dumb and stubborn about this, where if you slide a guy inside, it's like accepting defeat that he can't play tackle, when in reality, it's just because those guards sucked. So we'll see, and they have a left tackle. So we'll see what they do in time. Then they also took Cameron Dantzler in the third round. I wasn't a huge Dantzler guy, but in the third round, I liked it. He's kind of a matchup corner. He's got really nice length. He's 6'2", 6'3" on a good day. But he's not overly fast. He's very skinny, so he's not a guy that you necessarily want on like the Mike Evans, the DeAndre Hopkins, the Mike Williamses of the world, but maybe a guy that if you go against a Robbie Anderson or I don't know, some of these lengthier receivers that don't necessarily have premier speed, and Robbie Anderson's obviously very fast, but it's, you're not talking about Tyreek Hill or anything. Like Dantzler can run. But anyway, he's a lengthier, interesting matchup corner. If he could beef up in size, he might be a starter. And then DJ Wonnum, this was a great find for the Vikings. This is probably the biggest reason they're making this list is they needed an edge player, especially with Danielle Hunter now out for the year. And Wonnum was this gifted, lengthy, athletic prototype defensive end in a 4-3 scheme. Who just didn't produce in college. And Zimmer's had success with these athletic guys, and you're seeing Wonnum get coached up, developing at the next level, getting better on a week-to-week basis, and he looks like a great find for the Vikings. And then in the fourth round, they also took James Lynch and Troy Dye, who haven't been big impacts as rookies, but they're kind of higher upside rotational players that I think that could play a role. Lynch is a pass rusher on the interior on rotational downs, and Troy Dye maybe as a weak side linebacker, potentially long-term replacement for Anthony Barr, but he has not been on the field. Wilson at linebacker there has had a good season, so Dye just hasn't gotten to see the field too much, but I think those guys could be future contributors. Again, a rough year for defenders. So the Vikings got an A at the time. I would probably give them an A+, honestly, because they nailed the Justin Jefferson pick, and I think they got some contributors in the mid-rounds. Gladney could be a future starter for a long time. So I really like the Vikings draft. Then the Chargers, they're actually going to rank second here, and this is all about Justin Herbert. If you want to grade every single pick in this draft, you might not say it was like they knocked process-wise every single pick out of the park, but they got their quarterback, which, like we talked about with the Bengals, it just doesn't matter what you do after that, especially when you take a guy that was regarded by myself and, 85, 90% of the draft community said this guy was going to be a bust, the next Mitchell Trubisky. I'll own it. Justin Herbert has been a much better player in the pros than he was at Oregon. And the Chargers saw something in him. They saw a way to utilize him with a really talented group of receivers to just utilize that raw arm talent and allow the game to slow down for Justin Herbert. And it has, and they've nailed this pick. Now, he's not perfect. I think we've seen some of the flaws show up from his Oregon tape, and that's only relevant to bring up if you're talking about, can Herbert be a Patrick Mahomes, a Russell Wilson, an Aaron Rodgers, like an elite quarterback? I don't know if the play-to-play consistency is ever going to be there. He's had some of those head-scratching mistakes, but I think you're talking about somewhere between Matthew Stafford and like what we've seen from Ryan Tannehill over the last, 16 starts of his career, really in that franchise quarterback breadth of super talented players that can have an explosive offense. So they nailed that pick, especially getting him sixth, the third quarterback drafted. I think you take Herbert over Tua in a heartbeat right now. So they stayed put. They got their guy. That is a slam dunk draft pick. So that's why they rank second. Now, I liked the other guys they took. So they took Kenneth Murray in the first round as well. It's been a rough year for rookie defensive players. Rookie linebackers in general tend to have really slow starts, especially lately with the way the middle of the field is getting attacked by all these modern passing games. Middle linebacker is becoming very quickly one of the hardest positions to play in the league, right there with quarterback, and I've always said cornerback is up there. But middle linebacker, with the way modern offenses are attacking that part of the field, it's an issue for these young guys. And you've seen it with Kenneth Murray. He's biting the cheese a little bit, but he's made some really nice plays as well. He gets depth in his drops, and he is a guy that I think is only going to continue to show that leadership and develop into a really nice player. So while it's not showing yet, I do still trust the process with Kenneth Murray. Then you have Josh Kelly. This is a good time to take a running back. 4th round, they needed a complement to Austin Eckler. Now, I think they may have found it in Kalen Ballage off the street, but Josh Kelly, when he's been out there, has looked really good. He's looked better than I expected. I would credit Anthony Lynn for once getting some credit here. If he does one thing well, and this is not a very valuable thing, but he can coach up a running back. He was a former NFL running back. He's good at identifying skill sets and getting guys to play to the play style that is best suited for them, and Josh Kelly has found some success here early on. And then they took a couple receivers that I really liked. Now, this is a super good receiving core. I don't think this group of receivers gets enough credit for being one of the best groups in the league. You obviously have Williams and Keenan Allen, but they've had 2 guys in Jalen Guyton and the Johnson kid. I forget what his first name is. There's so many Johnsons in the NFL, but the Johnson at receiver that they have has been a legitimate deep threat. So Joe Reed and KJ Hill haven't quite seen the field, but I like these guys. Joe Reed I compared to kind of a less athletic Deebo Samuel, and he's shown some of those flashes as a kick returner, as a guy that can get involved on not trick plays, but the designed touches, manufacturing touches, jet sweeps, screens, that kind of stuff. He can even line up at running back. And then KJ Hill is just a refined slot receiver who just isn't athletically gifted enough to play over some of these other guys in this really great unit. But honestly, the Chargers 1 through 6 have playmakers at that receiver position. So I like the Chargers draft. I gave it a C- at the time. I was wrong. Justin Herbert has developed. If I did it over again, I trusted my evaluation. The Justin Herbert we've seen in the NFL is a really good-looking quarterback, but it's not the quarterback that was coming out of Oregon. If you try to tell me that, that's just not what your eyes would tell you. Herbert was timid, made too many mistakes, just didn't pass the eye test at Oregon, and he does in the NFL. So I gave him a C- at the time. No regrets about that, but now you got to give it an A. Good job on the Chargers. Hindsight is 20/20, and they nailed it with Justin Herbert. Maybe even an A+. And then the number 1 class for me, it's really top-heavy here, but it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I gave them an A at the time. 2 of my favorite picks in the entire class. They really found the 2 pieces that they needed for this team were right tackle, and free safety. And they went there in the first 2 rounds, and they took, to me, 2 top 20 players. Honestly, a top 10 player and a top 20 player in the second round. So they get Tristan Wirfs with their 14th pick. I think they moved up. They gave up a late round pick to move up to 13 to get Tristan Wirfs, who's been the best tackle in the league. He's right there with Justin Jefferson and Justin Herbert for the best rookies in the NFL. He's been outstanding, week to week ass kicker. Such a great find. If you redrafted, the Giants would take Wirfs at 4 in a heartbeat, if not sooner, with teams like Washington at 2. So he's been outstanding. Love what you're seeing from Tristan Wirfs. So athletic, but he's improved his anchor and just really worked at his game. So he's been outstanding. And then they take Antoine Winfield, which was, I think I had a pretty good draft season. I had a lot of good calls. Antoine Winfield, one of them. I had him as a top 20 player in my class. I did not understand, unless it was health, but he finished his final year at Minnesota. He had a couple unfortunate injuries. He's been healthy in the NFL. I wasn't too worried about it. Unless it was health, I didn't see anything that any competent scout could say, this guy is not Tyrann Mathieu, if that makes sense. Like, this guy is a playmaker, athletic, comes out and stuns with a 4.4 40. He tackles well. He's instinctive. Like, he is the ideal safety. You can play free safety, strong safety. He could play slot corner if you wanted him to. Just prototype playmaker at the safety, nickel, just anywhere you put him in the secondary that's not outside corner. And that's what he's been. He's been a playmaker. You got 2 safeties in the NFC South, probably the top defensive rookie of the year candidates. You're seeing some of those top picks like Chase Young and Isaiah Simmons come on, so it's going to be a tough stretch for these defensive rookie of the year candidates. But regardless, this was one of the most just all-around need, value, sleeper, like just one of the best picks in the entire draft to get Antoine Winfield in the second round. After that, they didn't do a whole lot. I did like the Tyler Johnson pick in the 5th round, so they take a couple of gophers. Johnson is just a quality, I don't want to say quality starter, but quality rookie impact. Think of the, I guess, Keenan Allen mold of a not uber athletic receiver, but crafty, great route runner, tough dude. He's been a find for them. It's obviously such a great receiver room, and ever since they got Antonio Brown in there, he just hasn't seen the field much. But he's a guy that in other draft classes that weren't as loaded at this receiver position, you're probably looking at him as a 3rd, 4th round value, and a guy that if he got more opportunities somewhere else, probably could be a quality starter right away. So I do like Tyler Johnson. He fell because of some random character concerns that have not shown in the NFL and didn't show in college, but for whatever reason, they just kind of randomly showed up in the pre-draft process. Kind of a weird thing. I would love to, if I had the connections, I would love to kind of find out what happened with the Tyler Johnson slander in the pre-draft process. What did he do that led to all of these, whether it was coaches or scouts or what happened to have this countrywide slander on Tyler Johnson's character? Because it really led to him falling to the 5th round, and I just don't get it. I haven't heard anything about it. And if someone watching this knows, let me know, because I would love to know. They did take Keyshawn Vaughn in the 3rd round. I hated that pick. I thought he was a dime a dozen running back. I didn't hate him, but he's not a player that I'm taking in the 3rd round. Like, the grade between him and James Robinson was marginal. And, I mean, if they took James Robinson here, it obviously would have been a better pick. Vaughn hasn't seen the field. They keep signing other guys. I hated that pick. It's probably the only knock on the entire Bucs draft. But you get Wirfs and Winfield, just mail it in. It really doesn't matter what you do at that point on. And we kind of said that on draft day. I gave them an A then. I liked the Johnson pick, but I didn't really like anything else they did, and that's totally played out. So, for the most part, these are cases of the draft grades mattering. We will do a regrading video at some point of the entire draft, but I get so many comments of basically if they disagree with the grade I give on your team, it's, what do you know? We don't know what these players are going to do, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, that's true. There's surprises. The Justin Herbert surprise, for example. But for the most part, these were drafts that I really liked after the draft season that would have ranked in the top 10 of my drafts back then. They've proved out, and here we are re-ranking them, and they're still really good drafts. And we mocked the Packers early on, saying that was a terrible draft. There's others that I would rank really low, and those also would be at the bottom of the list as they were at the time. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but I got nothing at the moment. But you guys know what I'm talking about. So just to kind of defend my honor as someone that does draft grades after the draft, they're real. They show. There's obviously surprises. And I said at the time with the Chargers, if Justin Herbert works out, which I gave him a chance, I didn't like him, but I recognize the upside. If he works out, it's not going to matter. But yeah, there's the look back at the 2020 draft. So re-ranking the top 5, we have Chiefs, Panthers, Vikings, Chargers, Bucks. All right, so I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to recap the Week 12 games, and then we'll get into the mailbag. So I want to start the Week 12 recap with the Seahawks-Eagles game. And we will not have a recap of the Steelers-Ravens battle on Wednesday afternoon that I'm all about. This podcast will probably post around the time of that. Hopefully going to get it up before then. But let's talk about the Seahawks-Eagles Monday night game, because I got a lot of things to discuss about this game on both sides. So I want to start with Seattle. And this is going to be kind of tough to explain, but I hope it makes sense, and I hope you follow it. So the Seahawks started with this exciting let Russ cook movement, where it was, let's pass the ball more, let's get away from Pete Carroll's traditional thinking of we got to run the ball and play defense, like it's 1995. And it was fun. It was really explosive. There was about the first month of the season, we were like, wow, the Seahawks look like the Kansas City Chiefs. And there was a point there where it was like, is Russell Wilson the best quarterback in the NFL? And they had a really fun stretch with this thing. But it reached a boiling point. It really did, for a lot of different reasons. And I want to kind of explain how they reached that boiling point and why getting back to the basics, so to speak, of who the Seattle Seahawks are, which we've totally seen for the last month, is better for the Seahawks' overall upside and chance to win a Super Bowl. So we saw Cardinals, Bills, was it the Rams game? Yeah, the Rams game. They had a three-week stretch there where they kind of reached a boiling point with this offense. And Russ was starting to make some mistakes, and they really got away from their comfort zone as a team. And this is not an anti-Russell Wilson spiel. I will say that I think it's become clear that Mahomes is obviously the better quarterback, and I think you have a pretty strong case that Rodgers is just a more methodical, well-rounded quarterback at this point than Russell Wilson, but that's neither here nor there. This is not an anti-Russell Wilson spiel. He is amazing, and I think in a different world where he has Andy Reid as his head coach, where he has some of these other modern-thinking coordinators and cultures, you would see a different version of Russell Wilson and see him grow in different ways. But who the Seahawks are and who they always are under Pete Carroll, and Pete Carroll's not going anywhere. He's a great head coach, even though he has his flaws. Who they've always been is a pro-style traditional team. Let me explain what that means. So if you want the let Russ cook thing, if you want Russ to throw the ball 40 times a game, you are talking about, if you want it to be sustainable, a full-on schematic overhaul. Because as much as you want it to happen, the Seahawks offense under Russell Wilson, really ever since going back to when he got there, but even when he's become an elite quarterback, which he totally is, they are a pro-style offense, which means they're going to run to set up the deep pass, a lot of play action. They're not going to have the West Coast philosophies of, basically in a lot of ways in the West Coast offense, the passing game is in a lot of ways your run game, so to speak. You have a methodical, quick-hitting design to your offense that is going to set up third and manageable, sustain drives, and be a ball control offense. And that is not the Seahawks offense, and it probably never will be as long as Pete Carroll is the head coach, because that is not his approach. Even though he's a defensive mind, the way Pete Carroll views a winning football team is a team that runs the ball well, is very efficient in the vertical passing game, as they've been for years with Russell Wilson, and plays good defense. Now, if you want to throw the ball 40 times a game without a West Coast scheme, it is not sustainable, and we saw this team reach a boiling point because of a lot of reasons. Number one is you're creating easy looks for your quarterback when you run a well-rounded West Coast scheme, which again is not what they have here. What we saw was, they were passing the ball 40 times a game, but you're getting vertical shots and not really making it easy on Russell Wilson. You were putting a ton of pressure on Russ to execute basically the vertical concepts within the play designs of the Seattle scheme, which is a lot of play action and a lot of your more traditional looks as a, talk about your 5-7 step drops, traditional deep passing concepts. You're not talking about the Rams where you're designing deep crossing route shots or everything that Andy Reid is doing. You're talking about more traditional stuff here, which puts a lot of stress on the quarterback, and that is exactly what we saw. So, Seattle reached this boiling point where they said, okay, we are putting way too much stress on the offense. Because of the design here, we're either scoring in 4 plays, which is great, but we're either scoring in 4 plays or we're going 3 and out because we're not really creating easy looks and having methodical drives here with the way they were calling the plays. And that's how we saw this historically bad defense in Seattle, combined with some blown coverages and a lack of pass rush and all this stuff. But to me, they were putting the defense on the field way too much, which is not something Pete Carroll is comfortable with. Because like I said, you're either scoring in 4 plays because Russ is amazing and Metcalf and Lockett, or you're going 3 and out because they're not really having these methodical drives. And that put a ton of pressure on the defense. And Pete Carroll is like, okay, this was fun. It's great to see that we can do this, but we got to get back to playing Seahawks football. And say what you want about that. It can win. It has won in the past. It is how Pete Carroll knows how to win. It is the comfort zone of Pete Carroll and, frankly, Russell Wilson to play pro-style offense, pound the ball, power runs. They have these mauling offensive linemen, and you can stem that into a very efficient, deep passing offense. And while doing that, they're going to keep the defense fresh, off the field more often. And I believe, despite the fact that they might not blow anybody out because of this play style, they're going to be much more in their comfort zone, play controlled, and come playoff time, which you're going to get close games regardless, they're going to be in their comfort zone. So I hope that all made sense. I really think that Seattle is back to what they're comfortable with, but the difference now is not only are they a more talented roster as they were last year, because they had some real talent deficiencies on this roster last year that aren't so much there this year. The defense isn't great, but as I said it would be, it's gotten much better under Pete Carroll, as it always kind of does. But they have this kind of trick in their back pocket now that they didn't really have before. It showed itself in flashes, and that's kind of what led to the let Russ cook thing, but I think it's a real lethal trick. And that is, they're going to be much more comfortable. If they fall behind 3 scores, they're going to be much more comfortable saying, all right, Russ, let's open this thing up. We're going to get away from the run game, and we're going to go. And I think they're going to be really comfortable doing that if they need to fall back on that, which is, we talk so much about teams like the Titans, the Ravens, a lot of times the Green Bay Packers, who just don't have the explosive receiver talent, even though they have the quarterback. We talk about these teams that they have their trick, they have what they do well, but if they get thrown off of their script, can they have a counterpunch? And Seattle will have that counterpunch, which come January is going to be a huge asset for them. But they're getting back to the basics. So I think Seattle's in a great place. There might be people that are worried about this passing offense not looking like it did. They might be worried that Russell Wilson isn't going to win the MVP now because he's not passing the ball as much. But for this team, the way they are constructed, this is the best version of Seattle football. So I think Seahawks fans are feeling pretty good about where they're at. But if you aren't, I wouldn't worry. I think they're in their comfort zone right now and feel really good about where they're at. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles. Deep breaths for this one. This is so painful. I think we're going to look back on the Philadelphia Eagles as one of the all-time collapses of a potential dynasty or whatever you want to say. We talked about the 3 pillars of an organization earlier, and you go back to the Eagles after they won a Super Bowl in 2017. 3 pillars of the organization: coach, front office, and quarterback. They had all 3 at a high level. Starting with the coach, Doug Peterson looked like a rock star coach, scheming up plays for Nick Foles and developing Carson Wentz, and that looked great. You had the front office. Howie Roseman was applauded by myself and virtually any analyst you listened to at the time as a top 3 general manager at worst. Made great free agent signings, trades, draft picks, was just lights out. And then the quarterback, Carson Wentz, who in my opinion was the MVP of that season. 2017, he was the best quarterback in the league that year. You go back in time, 3 years, people like me and many others were talking about Carson Wentz as the next Aaron Rodgers. The guy that we talk about, Patrick Mahomes, today, as this guy's going to be the face of the NFL for 15 years. What happened? What the hell happened? All 3 of those pillars have collapsed. Like all these guys. Maybe if Doug Peterson was still a good coach, or if Carson Wentz was his old self, or if Howie Roseman could still team build, you could lift the other guys up a little bit. But all of these guys have had colossal collapses. So it starts with Doug Peterson to me, who nothing could be more obvious and evident that Frank Reich was the mind behind the machine here, if you will. Because Frank Reich immediately goes to be the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, and boom, this dude is lights out. Player development, play calling, everything was just locked on. Staff hirings, culture fits, just everything was great with Frank Reich in Indianapolis. And ever since then, Doug Peterson has been, pardon my French, a shit show. And it's not just this year, guys. Go back to what I said about the Eagles around this time last year. I was kind of done with Doug Peterson. The things we're seeing here are not new. This was the Eagles last year, and he got praised because they made the playoffs. Honestly, my honest opinion, and I'll be very critical of Carson Wentz here, but my honest opinion is Carson Wentz carried that team last year, and the defense with Jim Schwartz. It was playing good defense and Carson Wentz pulling plays out of his butt and saving the team with late game heroics. Doug Peterson did nothing for that team last year. Nothing. The play calling was brutal last year, and it's been even worse this year. Anyone that's watched the anyone that's watched the Eagles this year was not surprised to see what was the worst coached team in the league, in a league with Adam Gase, the worst coached team in the league. Running screens where the receivers don't even know who's the intended screen target, wasting timeouts that you're going to need in the fourth quarter, going for it mindlessly on fourth down like a salty 7-year-old playing Madden. It's a complete mess. Playing guys like Alshon Jeffrey for no good reason over Travis Fulgham. It's a disaster. Doug Peterson, I don't care what you say about Adam Gase. He sucks. He's the 31st worst coach in the league. But I've seen nothing from Doug Peterson that tells me if he was coaching Joe Flacco and Sam Darnold with that team in New York, that they would win a game. So, Adam Gase did win 7 games with that team last year. He took a bad Dolphins team to the playoffs. Can't believe I'm defending Adam Gase, but I would rather have Adam Gase than Doug Peterson right now. It's that bad. This team they do not look like they're prepared at all. How many times did I say before Monday night that they snapped the ball and the players don't know what's going on? You can't say that about the Jets. They at least know what the play call is. The Jets, the Eagles snap the ball and rushers are coming in free. The linemen are dancing around doing this. Carson Wentz is just all over the place. The receivers running the wrong routes. It's a disaster. So Doug Peterson has completely collapsed. Like, vomit in his shirt every week. How is he still the head coach? This is one of the most all-time embarrassing head coach performances I've ever seen. So he's collapsed. Then you go to the front office. What happened to Howie Roseman? So they also, like Frank Reich leaving, they've lost some guys. So forgive me, I think it's Joe Douglas. Yeah, it's Joe Douglas. He went to the Jets. His first draft was pretty good out there for New York. I'm a kind of a fan of what he's done there. He looks pretty good. And I want to say, I should have researched this before the show, so my apologies, but I want to say the Browns' new general manager was also hired from Philadelphia. Don't hold me to that, but I believe that's also true. So, also Howie Roseman is losing some guys around him, and all of a sudden we're like, was Joe Judge the reason they were good? What's going on here? Not Joe Judge, the other Joe that we just said. But Howie Roseman, the last 2 years, drafted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside ahead of DK Metcalf. What? I do the draft stuff for a living. I knew that was a bad move at the time. But, anyone with a pair of eyeballs knows that was a bad pick. And Howie Roseman did it. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside made a couple nice contested catches at Stanford, and that's about it. He's slow, doesn't run good routes. He caught the ball in traffic. Great. That's a 5th, 6th round prospect. That's exactly where I had him. Some people liked him, but he can't play football at the next level. And he does that. He's made some other bad draft picks. I didn't like the Jalen Reagor pick. He hasn't worked out. I didn't think he was a good route runner. I thought he was an interesting project, but a day 2 pick. A guy that could contribute as a kick returner right away, but a guy that doesn't really make contested catches, wasn't a refined route runner, was a bit of a project in a really good receiver class. And he took him over Justin Jefferson. And not just Justin Jefferson. There's a long list of greater receivers than Jalen Reagor. The Jalen Hurts thing, I don't know what that was all about. The Darius Slay trade was a disaster. Like, Darius Slay got whooped this week. He's been their best D-back, but he has not been a guy worth trading a pick and then paying $20 million. So, I mean, their team is falling apart piece by piece. This was one of the most talented rosters in the league, and all of a sudden, they still have their D-line intact. Oh, yeah, their D-line signings. Malik Jackson has not worked out, and they paid... I didn't like the signing of the Hargreaves, the Pittsburgh D-tackle that they gave a bunch of money. So the free agent signings have been aloft. So the front office has crumbled. The coach, the front office, and now Carson Wentz. If you line up every quarterback that's played every game this year, I can't think of one that's been worse than Carson Wentz. And this is someone as a huge Carson Wentz stan. Adam is a top 10 quarterback coming into the year, said, yeah, he's got some problems, but I mean, this dude can carry a team. He's a lot of weeks. He looks like an elite quarterback. I can't defend him anymore. Everything is broken with his game, and I think Doug Peterson sure as hell ain't helping. Frickin' Howie Roseman sure isn't helping by making him throw to Alshon Jeffrey and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. But, man, you play this bad, you can't excuse it. He's been inaccurate. His decision-making has been the worst in the league. He isn't processing at a high level at all. It's been an absolute colossal disaster. So what do if you're Philadelphia? Here's my plan. If I am the owner of the Eagles, I think it's Jeffrey Lurie. Here's my plan. It's a two-step save the Eagles, fly again, make the Eagles fly again operation. That's what I'm dubbing this thing. So plan A is Doug Peterson's out yesterday. Maybe even like Monday night after the game. Bye-bye. See you, dude. Good luck somewhere else. Maybe go be a quarterback coach or, I don't know, go coach like San Diego State or something where you belong. But yeah, see you, Doug. We're gonna promote Jim Schwartz, who's had success as a head coach in this league. I have no problem with Jim Schwartz. You're gonna come back as the defense coordinator next year. But Doug Peterson's gone, and we're gonna appeal to some of these top offensive coordinators. Whether it's Eric Bieniemy, Brian Dable, you could go the Shanahan tree route and go with Arthur Smith, which I think could be a great way to save Carson Wentz. You've got Joe Brady potentially down there for Atlanta. I feel like I'm leaving someone off the list, but there's 5 or 6 really intriguing offensive coordinator candidates that are just significantly better than Doug Peterson. So you do that. And you look at the other pillars, Carson Wentz and Howie Roseman, and a lot of people are wanting to fire them, and I get it. They've been awful. But to me, Howie Roseman is a great scout who understands how to team build, who's made some big mistakes. And I pull him into the office and I say, hey, Howie, we're going to make a change at coach. You've got a year. We got to make the playoffs next year or we're going to fire you. Sorry. You've made too many mistakes here. We like you, Howie. We want you to turn this thing around. You have 1 year to do it. Go on, go to work, start scouting the draft. And then we call Carson Wentz into the office and probably keep Jim Schwartz, call up Jim Schwartz and have a conversation with Schwartz and Wentz and Hurts. Let's just get all the into the office. Wentz, Schwartz, Hurts. We're gonna have a group meeting here. We're gonna make a quarterback change here. I'm not always gonna step in as the owner in the quarterback operations, but we're gonna make a change here. Carson, you are our franchise quarterback, but clearly you need some time to evaluate yourself, work with our quarterback coaches, get yourself right. Take some time off, step away, see what you're doing wrong. You're going to come back next year, and you're going to compete with Jalen Hurts, who you are now the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. This is now a quarterback competition, but Carson, we still believe in you. We want you to work on yourself, and we're going to roll into next year with, hopefully Jim Schwartz here is going to be back as our defense coordinator. We'll have a new offensive mind. Wentz, Hurts, we're gonna run this thing back. And Howie is going to get you some weapons, Carson, and we're gonna try to make the playoffs next year and save this thing. I think Howie and Wentz have shown enough to have faith in them for one more year. And Wentz, you can't get rid of him anyway because of that contract. I think I saw it's a $54 million dead cap if they were to do something with him. So that's the plan A. And then if it doesn't work, you have some rethinking to do. Obviously, Howie's gone. Howie, we told him straight up, ultimatum, playoffs or done. So Howie is done. I think he would get a job pretty quickly. I think his resume is really impressive. But we're going to go somewhere else with the general manager. And then obviously you would have to decide, did Carson Wentz play good enough to keep that job? Did the new coach, whoever it is, did he do enough to decide to keep those guys? But most likely you're going to move on from Carson Wentz because if he doesn't play well, it's probably the reason you didn't make the playoffs. And then the coach, I think you probably have enough confidence in the guy you hired to bring him back. But that's the plan. Plan A is move on from Doug Peterson, bench Wentz the rest of the season, make Jim Schwartz the interim head coach, bring Schwartz back, and if it doesn't work, you got plan B, and that's Wentz is gone and Howie is gone. They're not doing that. That's not what they're doing. They're sticking with Doug Peterson. They're sticking with Carson Wentz. They're one of my favorite things that I say on this channel is, what's the first game in the rule? What's the first rule in the game of holes? Stop digging. If you're digging yourself a hole, it ain't that hard. Just take your shovel, set it down, look around, and do something else. But the Eagles aren't doing that, and they have issues. And the fact that the owner can't realize what's going on here is bad. Like, that's bad ownership, in my opinion. Like, you have the wrong man running your football team in Doug Peterson. It could not be any more clear. If you have eyeballs, he is not an NFL head coach. The team is not prepared. So that's enough spieling about the Eagles, but I just find these teams very interesting. So I'm glad we got to talk about them. We're going to go a little bit more quickly through the rest of these games because there wasn't as much interesting stuff going on this week. A lot of weird stuff with COVID and games getting moved around, some ugly games. So we'll get through that. I'm going to take a quick break, polish up the voice, and we'll come back and recap the rest of these games. Okay, here we go. The rest of the rundown from Week 12. So Tennessee at Indianapolis. I predicted that Tennessee was going to win this game, and they came out and really asserted their authority in the AFC South. It's interesting. The Titans have really transitioned. You go back about 20 games or so back in the Mariota era, and they were such a meh and bleh team. They were very average at virtually every position. They were fine on offense, fine on defense, but didn't really have that identity and high upside. And now they do, but you're seeing more of a boom or bust team. I think that bust is just them being about as good as they were with Mariota, to be fair, but their expectations have changed, if that makes sense. So if your expectations are this is a team that can win a Super Bowl, their bust is going to look more like their old selves. So they're clearly just growing and becoming a much better team. But yeah, they've become this boom or bust team in that they really rely on big plays on offense, but they're maybe more than any team other than the Chiefs. I mean, there's maybe a few other candidates, but very few teams are capable of at any moment just hitting you for 60 yards. And it's A.J. Brown and it's Derrick Henry. It's that simple. I mean, these two guys are two of the hardest tackles in the league, and they both have breakaway speed. And they are just insanely frustrating to play against. Now, if you show up and you bring it and you do tackle these guys and luck swings your way so that they don't get the blocking lanes to get those breakaway opportunities, that's when you start to see the bust version of the Titans because, Tannehill dropping back 30 times a game, traditional sets, not getting those big plays. It's not ugly, but it's just not like scary. And the defense for Tennessee, simply put, just isn't all that good. But I'd much rather have this sort of high upside team than what they used to be. So it's just an interesting transition for the Titans. Clearly, they're the highest upside team in the AFC South. And that takes me to the Colts, who are, in a lot of ways, like those old Titans. Really steady team. Now, I think this Colts team is better than those 9-7 Titans teams. I think the Colts are more of a 10-11 win, above average team, so to speak. But Colts fans get so mad at me, and the Colts fans have just been ruthless towards me as if I'm some Colts hater. I'm definitely not. Like, I've talked this team up for years. I have Super Bowl futures on them. I'm a huge Phillip Rivers fan. I'm just real about this team. They're not really a Super Bowl contender because they don't have that fear factor, which in a lot of ways is superstars, especially on offense. Now, I've made the case that they don't have enough elite game-changing defensive players as well. I think Buckner is in that conversation. I think Darius Leonard is one of the best linebackers in the league, but it's very difficult to be a guy that changes game plans as a linebacker. No one's rewiring their play calling because of Darius Leonard, who's not an elite coverage linebacker. If he gets you, he gets you, but it's not like you're talking about Aaron Donald or Khalil Mack or one of the Bosas or, an elite cornerback or an elite safety. You don't rewire your team and game plan all week for Darius Leonard just by the nature of that position. Darius Leonard's going to do what he does, but he's not going to take away something you do well, if that makes sense. So really, other than Buckner, who you do kind of need a double team Buckner, that's great. But other than him, they don't really have superstar game changers on defense, and they definitely don't on offense, where it's more important to have those. The offense is fine. They have a great offensive line. I still like Phillip Rivers, but they aren't explosive. And when you have Phillip Rivers, who just lacks physical traits, they are walking such a thin line where they need to play perfect, and Rivers is a guy that's prone to kind of have a play here or a play there where he sees a bad read or he floats a ball too much, and you're just like, shucks. Like, that was a bad turnover. And if they get that turnover, that's going to really hurt this team because you're putting pressure on the defense, which is really solid. It's a good, probably top 5, top 10 defense. I'm not worried about the defense. I just don't think it's a team, especially in a COVID season, that's going to win games on defense. This isn't the Bears or the Jags or the Steelers that we're talking about, the old Jags. They need the offense to step up, and they don't have a big play waiting to happen. You hoped that was going to be Jonathan Taylor, but he just has not been a good running back. T.Y. Hilton isn't what he used to be from an explosive aspect. I like Michael Pittman, but he doesn't have that fear factor. So the Colts are just like a really solid, steady team. They're going to win a lot of games, but I just don't think that they match up against really high upside teams who play better football. And when the Titans are on, they are one of those teams. When the Titans get those big plays, the Colts just can't keep pace. So they're both really solid teams. I think the Titans have a higher upside as we move forward. I still wouldn't be stunned if the Colts won this division. I think they're more consistent on a week-to-week basis. But when you get to the playoffs, I think the Titans have a better chance of winning a Super Bowl than the Colts. Then we have the Houston Texans at the Detroit Lions. Just not a great game to watch. Thanksgiving was just a rough football day. The one good game we had got taken away, and we're about to see that here this afternoon. But Deshaun Watson stole the show. I mean, he's a top 5 quarterback. He is right now playing like an elite quarterback. And if you're one of these top coaching candidates, the Texans, despite the lack of draft capital and all that, you might want the certainty of getting to play with Deshaun Watson. I mean, he is a coach saver. But especially if you're a guy like Eric Bieniemy and you just worked with Patrick Mahomes, you could do a lot of the same stuff with Deshaun Watson because of those traits. So I like the Bieniemy to Houston fit a lot. But yeah, Deshaun Watson's just incredible. Texans are going to be just fine. They've got some rebuilding to do. They got to clear up some cap space, fill out the roster. They have a lot of work to do, but they've got that. They got that pillar there with Deshaun Watson. They really do. Now they got to go get a GM. They got to get good coach. But they got one of those pillars figured out. That's really what every team should be looking to do, is fill out the 3 pillars of your organization. As for Detroit, they reached their boiling point this week. It's been a really rough couple of weeks for this team. And they, to me, are a much more difficult team to figure out. What are they going to be in 3 years? Where are they going to go? I tweeted out after they fired, I'm already forgetting his name now that he's out of the league, Matt Patricia. After they fired him, I said, wow, I can't wait to find out which coach the Lions fire next in 2023. Because it just feels like that's what's happening with this team. Like they can't get anything rolling. And that's tough. That's really tough. As an analyst, it's tough to tell, like, what are the right moves for this team to make, and it's even harder for the ownership to make those decisions. So you really have 2 questions to make. You know, the GM is what it is. I don't know who the best GM hire for them would be. Maybe me. I don't know. Just an idea. Feeling myself a little bit too much, maybe. But as far as the coach goes, let's start there. Because the Stafford thing, that's going to be the coach's decision, ultimately. I don't necessarily know what the right answer is there. I think you probably bring Stafford back another year. I don't see a better option. Especially because, and I'm kind of talking myself into keeping Stafford here, because the Lions' problem to me, it's not X's and O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes. You guys know that saying. As great as it would be for the Lions to be in a position where you could say all they need is a genius. They need Joe Brady or Bieniemy or one of these really good, inexperienced head coaches, but someone that knows how to offense, basically. It'd be great if they were in a position to do that. But they're not. They have an organizational problem. They don't play fast. Their team is not fast. Bob Quinn is gone. They're going to get some better athletes on that side of the ball, but their team is slow. They don't play disciplined. They don't play consistent at all. They don't know who they are. So I don't think bringing in Eric Bieniemy or bringing in Joe Brady, who's never been a head coach before, is actually going to work for this team, because I don't trust the Lions as a top-down organization to figure out the rest of the things. Because when you hire a coach like that, you gotta make the right hires other than that. Like, look at what the Rams did when they hired Sean McVay. They put him with Wade Phillips, former head coach, great defensive mind, and it was the perfect pairing. There's other examples of that. And I just think that if you're Detroit, I would be looking at a more experienced option. Someone that is very similar to what the Washington team did with Ron Rivera, who's no one thought Ron Rivera was the highest upside signing they could have made, but it was the perfect signing for them because he has completely rewired the entire organization. And I think that's what Detroit needs. And there's 3 names that come to mind here. And I want to make sure I know what 3 were on my mind before I start here, because I forgot the third, but we'll figure it out as we go. The first one that's interesting to me, and I don't know if it's the right answer, but I think it's something you think about, is Jim Harbaugh. And I know that's buzzy, it's hot takey, it's exciting, but he has really not been a great coach for about almost a decade now. It's been like 5, 6, 7 years since his glory days. But hear me out here. Harbaugh is a rah-rah guy. He's not an X's and O's guy. He is a rah-rah coach. And that, to me, is what you need. You need a culture setter. He's local. You would pry him away from Michigan, but you have a lot of dynamics there. Michigan fans, a lot of them Lions fans, probably don't want to see Harbaugh again, but I think it's an option. I definitely think it's an option, and I would rather go that route than one of these young coaches that just isn't proven, because I just don't see that working with the culture in Detroit right now. So you bring in Harbaugh, who can reestablish a program. I know it didn't work at the college level, but he is pretty proven on the NFL level. So he's an option. Maybe not your best option. The other guy that is interesting to me, and this is a spoiler for something we'll talk about later, But that's Raheem Morris, defensive coordinator for the Falcons. And I was surprised to find this out. Raheem Morris, he was a head coach. I just forgot that he was the Bucs head coach, 2009 to 2011. He was young. He was like 34 years old. He's only 44. And he has done an incredible job with that Falcons defense. Now, I'd rather hire an offensive guy, but like we said, Ron Rivera, it's not like Harbaugh's this great offensive mind, but Raheem Morris, I would give him an interview. Absolutely. Absolutely. I would want to hear, as the owner, I would want to hear what his plan for the Detroit Lions would be, because he has piqued my interest. Was a head coach at a very young age, high riser, but flamed out, and has kind of reestablished his career. He's done such a good job as the interim coach. I don't think Atlanta hires him as the head coach. Maybe they do, but I would give Raheem Morris an interview. Absolutely. And then the other option was another, maybe like Urban Meyer was the guy. I wish I could remember. I should have jotted it down. I think it was Urban Meyer. That kind of makes sense. But you get the point. If I'm Detroit, I'm looking for an experienced coach that can reset the culture there. So you get that, and then I talked myself into kind of keeping Stafford, because if your idea here is stabilization, trading a top 12, 15 quarterback with no real plan in place is not exactly sustainability. Maybe you draft a Zach Wilson or a Trey Lance. Maybe you do that. I'm all for that. But I don't think you start him right away. I think you bring Stafford back. So there's there's your Houston-Detroit talk. I know I didn't talk about the game like at all, but it wasn't much to really see. Washington at Dallas. I mean, how can you not be inspired watching Washington right now? You have Ron Rivera, who just beat cancer, and Alex Smith, who we didn't think was ever going to play again. And they're coaching their ass off. I mean, these guys are playing tough. They've got the culture down. They're figuring out some of the talent stuff, too. Like, obviously, you have Terry McLaurin, but they're figuring out some playmakers. Antonio Gibson can play. That was a great draft pick. You got some receivers kind of stepping up, Cam Sims and this Isaiah Wright. And then you have good find. Logan Thomas is playing well at tight end. Offensive line's playing better. The defense is coming along. Like, Washington's just figuring things out. They're playing together as a team. It's really inspiring. In a lot of ways, Ron Rivera is like a Coach of the Year candidate, because that team was left for dead. And then there's literally nothing left to say about Dallas. Like, Mike McCarthy is an all-time fraud of a head coach. He wasted Aaron Rodgers' career. Just terrible hiring by Dallas. He totally sold us on this, reworked McCarthy. Great, PR campaign. I don't know who his PR guy is, but got a bunch of articles out that he had been working with Pro Football Focus and was rechanging his mindset, and he's just still a terrible head coach. Surprise. He's got to go. I'll be really disappointed in Dallas if they bring him back. They just didn't show up. A short week. They were unprepared. They did not show up. They didn't tackle. They did not come with a game plan offensively. It was just brutal. These guys clearly don't want to play for Mike McCarthy. Okay, Arizona at New England. This was an interesting game, really scrappy game, a New England style of game. They kept the score down. But for Arizona, it's just kind of clear, they're not ready. You're starting to hesitate with Cliff Kingsbury a little bit. They have not been able to figure out who they are as an offense. They know what their scheme is. It's the Big 12, air raid offense. A lot of crossers, a lot of inside zone, bubble screens. They know who they are. They know what they want to be, I suppose, but they don't know who they are, if that makes sense. They're too young. Their line play is just not very good. They don't play with that identity, that discipline. They don't have their crutches it's some of these teams, like they have that experience and things to lean on. Whether you're the Rams and you're like, all right, it's 3rd and 9. We remember a play 2 years ago where in this situation we schemed up Robert Woods on a crossing route and it worked, and we're going to lean on that here. The Cardinals don't have those go-to things. They're a young team. They're inexperienced. The head coach is young and inexperienced. The quarterback is young and inexperienced. They're just not ready as a team. I still like their future outlook, but it's not a surprise that in a game where a few things didn't go their way, they missed the field goal at the end, the late hit out of bounds by Isaiah Simmons that I didn't really disagree with, but it's just it didn't look clean and professional from Arizona this week, and that to me is what led to the loss here, and they're just not ready. That's really all I feel about Arizona. And then you have the complete opposite with the Patriots, where Bill Belichick is just doing total Bill Belichick things. This team without Bill Belichick is a 2-win team. Like, seriously, they don't have any playmakers. They don't have a pass rush. Cam Newton is, I don't want to say he's bad, but he's just not a good quarterback. Like, he's fine. He takes care of the football. You can manufacture some runs for him, but he's not an explosive player. And he's fine. But this team with any average coach is a 2-win team. But they're 5-6. They persevere again. And they've totally found out who they are, which is, like we said, the Cardinals have not. And the Patriots, they say, we got a great offensive line. We got some good running backs. We've got a quarterback that can, open some things up with this run game. He can be efficient and take care of the football in the short to intermediate passing game. We've found Jacoby Myers, who's going to be our go-to option to move the sticks in the passing game. But we know we're not gonna lie to ourselves and try to throw the ball downfield and be this explosive offense. We know that's not who we are. So let's not do that. Let's do what we do well, and that's what Bill Belichick has always done. And as a football junkie, it's really fun to see them figure that out as the year goes on, because that's just what makes Bill Belichick the greatest coach in NFL history, and in my opinion, the greatest coach in the history of sports. And the defense has come along. The Belichick defenses always do that. I mean, talk about knowing and identifying what your strengths are as the season goes on. I mean, the secondary is clearly their strength, and they feed off of this group. So can the Patriots make the playoffs? Probably not. They have to go 3 straight on the road against the 2 LA teams and then at Miami. And then they have Buffalo. And then they do get the Jets at the end of the season. They're all winnable games, but I look at the Rams, and that's probably a game that's going to be really tough on them, but they could do it. If they do, they'll go 10-6. They might sneak in. If they do, can we finally give Bill Belichick a Coach of the Year award? Like, we're a long way away from that. They got to win out, and I don't think they're talented enough to do that. But if they do, can we stop messing around here and just give Belichick the Coach of the Year award? Because this is not a good, talented football team. I thought he deserved it last year, honestly. Even though Tom Brady was there, it's not the best football team. Now, they had more talent across the board than they do this year, but still, you get the point. Okay, Carolina at Minnesota. This was a really great comeback for Minnesota. This is the second year in a row that Cousins has kind of shown that he can lead a comeback. He did it against Denver last year, Carolina this year. Great job by this team. Just overall, they're showing a lot of toughness as a team that I don't know if they've shown in the past. Like, their season got off to this horrendous start, but Zimmer has got this defense to play at an acceptable level, which is so much credit to Zimmer. He's such a great defensive mind. Just another, I guess, performance this year by Zimmer to put on his resume as one of the great defensive minds in the league. And Kirk Cousins showing some resiliency. He gives up the scoop and score in this game, and then the next play, strip touchdown by the Panthers, Jeremy Chin. So they give up 2 defensive touchdowns on back-to-back plays. They dig themselves in a hole, and they fought back. And Cousins gets the ball with, a 3-point deficit just under the 2-minute warning. Game-winning drive. Big moment for Kirk Cousins. This Vikings team is really tough and resilient and trending upwards right now. Eric Kendricks, another beautiful interception in the red zone. He is definitely the best cover linebacker in the NFL right now. I'm comfortable saying that, and he's tackling great. Like, This is like the third time this year where I've been like, yeah, Eric Kendricks is the best linebacker in football. I think he's better than Bobby Wagner right now. He's more consistent than Levante David. And who's the other? Oh, and Fred Warner. I think he's just a better player than Fred Warner. I'm out of arguments for why Eric Kendricks isn't the best linebacker in football right now. He just is do it all. So then for the Panthers, we kind of talked about Jeremy Chin and this young defense stepping up. So I won't do that again. Jeremy Chin looks great. The boomer bust prospects looks like you're getting the boom for that athletic hybrid safety linebacker hybrid type of dude. But not a whole lot of changing of opinion for Carolina this week. I still like their future outlook, but not that we didn't know this already, but I mean, Teddy Bridgewater was just kind of average in this game. Not his best game of the year, but missed a big deep throw in this game. Had a wide open, I think it was Robbie Anderson. Everyone here knows that Teddy Bridgewater is not going to win you a Super Bowl. He was a bridge quarterback, but he's been really good at that. He's making a lot of money here. You feel very good about him as your starter next year if your expectations are we're still kind of building this thing up. But at some point, you do need to get that upside at the quarterback position. This is kind of why I wanted to see another week of PJ Walker, because he's got some of those athletic traits that you get excited about. But that is the big question for the Carolina Panthers, is how are they going to avoid getting stuck in purgatory? And they could technically do it with Teddy Bridgewater if they built an elite defense here and just built a perfect roster and kind of had a dream season, right? That's always an option for everyone, but that's not really the way you want to go about things. You want to, especially if you're in the Panthers' shoes, where you're in rebuild mode, you want to attack upside at that quarterback position. A guy that's going to be a Watson, a Wilson, a Rodgers, a Mahomes, where it doesn't really matter what else transpired in the offseason. If he's your quarterback, you feel great about your chances to at least be a playoff team, if not better. That's not Teddy Bridgewater. Like, if Teddy Bridgewater didn't have help, he's not a playoff quarterback. Like Keyz saying point this year. It's not a great team. It's just an okay team. So how are they going to address this thing? How do they get an elite quarterback here? Because all of a sudden, this team's average, they're going to be picking 8th. If they don't draft a quarterback this year, assuming you're getting another star added here, they're probably going to be pretty progressive in free agency. They're probably going to be a better team next year than they were this year. So if they win 8 games next year with Teddy Bridgewater, you're getting really dangerously in that purgatory range. So I think Panthers fans, it's leading up to this point where like they like Teddy. I can't blame you. Like he's a starting caliber quarterback. Like you could technically win with Teddy Bridgewater, and you want to see a star pass, maybe not pass rusher, but you want to see a star corner or a star free safety or another, an elite tackle or something. Like I'm sure there's Panthers fans that want to go quarterback, but I've also heard Panthers question me when I say Teddy Bridgewater isn't the future, and he just isn't. Like, I'm sorry, he just isn't. I shouldn't have to explain that. But I think there's going to be some Panthers fans that might be shaking their heads if this team drafts Trey Lance. Or, God forbid they take like Jamie Newman or something like that in the first round and really reach. I think this team is smarter. I think this organization's smarter than to do that. But I would not be surprised if Carolina goes with a quarterback in this draft to get more upside. So lots of interesting conversations to be had this offseason. They also could be a team that makes a move for Sam Darnold. I would love to see that because I think there's upside there, right? That's a great landing spot because if he doesn't work out, he doesn't work out. If he really is this bust and can't play football and turns the ball over too much, so be it. You give up a 3rd-round pick, but I think it's worth finding out if with a better situation, if you can get that out of him. I think Carolina, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, those are your dream landing spots, or San Francisco. Those are your dream landing spots for Sam Darnold. I would give up my 2nd-round pick to find out. I think they're in a great position. I know it sounds like a lot based on what Darnold's shown, but getting that elite quarterback is so important. And the Panthers have a great foundation. Yeah, they might need an offensive tackle. They might need a tight end. Like, they might have some other needs, but you can find those with your other draft picks. I am going to throw darts at every elite option at the quarterback position as I can. So we'll see where that goes. They have some options. They have some routes to go. Or they trade up. They could give up a boatload of picks and go get like Justin Fields or something maybe. I don't know. They got options. Okay, Cleveland at Jacksonville. Jacksonville, I actually have some things to say about this week. Jay Gruden is a really good coach. This is now the third quarterback that they've put out, and they've come out with good game plans, whether it's Minshew, Luton, or now Mike Glennon. None of these guys are great starters, and they've come out and had a really steady, capable offense all year long. Honestly, if I'm Jacksonville, I don't overcomplicate this. I would just make Jay Gruden the head coach. I think he's shown enough. I really do. And I would maybe start that process right now. Let Marone go and promote Jay Gruden. I think it's time. I think he's shown to be just as good of an offensive mind as some of these other candidates. And I don't know if they'd be able to appeal to like a Joe Brady or Brian Dable or Eric Bieniemy, but I don't think any of those guys are necessarily better head coach candidates than Jay Gruden. Jay Gruden didn't have a lot to work with in Washington. I thought he was incredible in 2015. I mean, they had possibly the best offense in the NFL with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. And it's not like he had they had pretty good weapons. Pierre Garçon was in his prime, Deshaun Jackson, and they had Jordan Reed, but they got good weapons here. I really like Jay Gruden. I think he should get another chance here in Jacksonville. I really think that's a good fit. So I would start that process right now. I would move on from Marone. This is one of the worst defenses in the league. Bring up Jay Gruden, interim and long-term head coach, and then you draft Fields or Lawrence, whoever you get the number 2 pick, and get to work. And then also Colin Johnson has shown a lot of flashes. I didn't like Colin Johnson. I don't really like any wide receiver that doesn't separate at the college level, but sometimes these big-bodied receivers, their physicality and work ethic just win out. And some of that showed with Johnson at Texas. I didn't think it was a great fit with some quarterbacks that can't really push the ball downfield. And he looks like yet another playmaker for this Jags wide receiving core that is just super under the radar and super deep. As for the Browns, this was an interesting game for them because they finally got to pass the ball. The last 3 weeks have been just super rainy, tough conditions. They have not had a great opportunity ever since Odell got injured. And you're seeing that this week where they start to get the play action going. They start scheming guys open, get that chemistry between Jarvis and Baker. This was my biggest question for the Browns, honestly, and they kind of answered it this week. Yeah, against the Jags defense, but just to see them do it and kind of get the ball rolling on this passing game a little bit was big for them as they head into the playoffs because they're looking like a playoff team. So they kind of have something to lean on in the passing game, which is creative ways to get Baker on the move and scheme up downfield targets for Jarvis Landry. That's really what it is. But the Browns are a poor man's version of San Francisco, which is a solid football team. They have a creative run game, a lot of outside zone, a lot of duo up front, inside zone duo, if you're not familiar, where you're kind of double teaming all the guys up front, working your way up to the second level. It's just a nice, clean, effective way to block that is just perfect for the way Nick Chubb runs with patience and vision and explosiveness. And then they scheme guys open off of play action, and they play defense. And they had a lot of starters out on defense, namely Myles Garrett. So, they're going to compete. They'll be scrappy in the playoffs. I don't think they have the upside. I think you ultimately need to be able to pass the ball better if you want to talk about being a Super Bowl team. But, Browns are in a good place. They have their coach. They have an identity and a lot of good talent, a lot of really good talent. So I'm going to take another break, and then we'll come back, wrap up the rest of these games, and then get into the mailbag. Okay, we've got the home stretch here. Still a lot of games to talk about. Starting with the Chargers at Bills game. Anthony Lynn, this ain't it. Great dude. He's a good culture guy. Oh, that might have been the other coach for Detroit, by the way, was Anthony Lynn, who I think players really like, and they play hard for him, but just he's missing some of that high-end stuff that you need from a good coach, especially when you find out that you got Justin Herbert, you feel really good about your upside. Just too many dumb coaching decisions, too conservative, too traditional. I think he's a solid coach, like just a football coach. I just don't know if he's a head coach. Someone I would want as a part of my organization, absolutely, but I think he just might be a cut below a head coach. And that showed in this game. Their fourth down attempts are predictable. Their third and short downs are predictable. Just running the ball, basically. Not creative enough on offense. And their decision making, like they punted. They were trailing in this game, and they punted with like 17 seconds left. They're on like the 45-yard line. It's like 4th and 6. Like, just do some math, Anthony Lynn. You go for it. If you get it, you can get 3 points before half. If you don't, you have 2 plays to prevent them from getting 20 yards. Like, I think you can do that. So, it's time to upgrade at coach. I really like Anthony Lynn. If there was a way to keep him in the building without it being weird, I would do it. I just think that's kind of the best way to look at this for the Chargers. Herbert was mostly good. He, had the bad mistake late in this game that really hurt them. They got a great opportunity to really get in this game, and he just threw a really bad pick over the middle of the field. But made some really nice plays as well. Herbert, again, is not the problem here. Joey Bosa had a, hey, remember me kind of game. Really dominant performance. One of the just individual defensive performances of the year. Bosa's quietly had a really good season. Good to see him kind of stay healthy and have a great year. This team could be really exciting next year with Bosa getting Derwin back as kind of a prove-it contract year. Got to rep the J. You got Herbert, explosive players on offense. Like, if they could get a really good head coach here, like maybe the guy that was watching on the other side of this game, Brian Daboll, who to me might be the most appealing head coach candidate. And this is such a great fit. I mean, I can't draw a better parallel of Brian Daboll going from Josh Allen to working with Justin Herbert. Very similar skill sets. And you have the receivers to work with. I love that idea. I think that is almost a no-brainer. Brian Daboll for the Chargers. For the Bills, not a very surprising game. Josh Allen continues to just be pretty steady. The game's slowing down. He's been accurate. But there's going to be, maybe every 20 plays you're going to have one of those Josh Allen head scratchers. It's like, maybe you're rolling a 20-sided die every play, and you might go 3 weeks and you don't get it. You luck out. You don't get that boneheaded interception or taking a sack, getting you out of field goal range. You might go a couple weeks and it just doesn't show up. But right now, I feel pretty good about Josh Allen being a really good quarterback. Physical traits galore. Is actually a pretty good processor and decision maker for the most part. But again, you're going to get some untimely mistakes. And when playoff time comes, you really got to hope that doesn't happen. And if it does, you hope it's just once a game and not 3 times in a game. That's kind of the best analogy I use for the Bills, but they have so much talent. The defense is coming on, and the Bills just keep coming. The Bills are one of those teams that it sounds weird that this isn't consensus across the league, but the Bills are one of these teams that understands that more good players is good for your team. They have just consistently added talent, whether it's free agency or the draft. Like, they just have been a really solid front office. And they're a team that has the 3 pillars. Let's just keep with that theme. Coach, quarterback, front office. They've got at least well above average in all 3 of those departments. All right, Raiders at Atlanta. Not much to really say about the Raiders. I'm not going to overreact to this one. It's after the Chiefs week where they really, I think, burned themselves out. And, if you've listened to me talk about the Raiders for the last 2 years, you probably weren't that surprised to see this. Now, if you're one of these diehard Raiders fans that think I'm just this Raiders hater and you're a Super Bowl contender and you're a top 10 team, you were probably pretty caught off guard that they got blown out 43-6 by the Falcons. But this was just a worse day at the office for a Raiders team that has been really steady and consistent, but if they don't have that preparation and they don't bring, they're a team that they elevate themselves as a team by coming prepared, playing fast, and playing really well coached and together. And they didn't do that this week, and they don't have that talent to lean on. Like, look at the Chiefs or the Seahawks or the Texans, like these teams that have crazy good players, especially at that quarterback position. When things go wrong, those guys are able to flip a switch and you can still win the game. That's not the Raiders. Like the Raiders, yeah, they can make a mistake here or there, but for the course of a game, like they're not going to get elevated by their superstars that they don't have. So not a surprising loss for the Raiders. They'll be fine. And then for Atlanta, we kind of talked about this already. With Raheem Morris, he's really catching my attention. The Falcons' defense is eye-opening. We know the Falcons can move the ball. Julio Jones was out. Matt Ryan did his thing. Like, whatever. That is what it is. Nothing new there. But the Falcons' defense is coming alive under Raheem Morris, and it's exciting. And he is making a case to be the head coach of this team next year. I don't think that's the route I would go because I think the Falcons have a lot of upside. It's not like Detroit where they need to, reset the foundations. That's an underrated thing. Is different coaches are better fits in different places. I think that's being revealed as we go through these different openings. Atlanta has a decent foundation, I think. They've got the players. I think the ownership is solid. Like they kind of need upside at that coaching position. It's a big reason Dan Quinn didn't work out, is he was just this kind of bland defensive mind. I would go an offensive hire with a lot of upside to get the most out of Matt Ryan, and you could actually be like a Super Bowl team in Atlanta if you rebuild the roster a little bit. Ideally, you do what we did in my Falcons rebuild on the YouTube channel. You get Joe Brady from Carolina as your head coach, and you bring Raheem Morris back as your defensive coordinator if someone else doesn't hire him. That's ideally here. But yeah, you're getting guys to step up. The pass rush has been much better here. The linebackers are flying around. Deion Jones and Aluakun are great. Keanu Neal's playing really well. The secondary is coming together. Ricardo Allen is rejuvenated. Like, really top to bottom, the defense is just really solid and coming alive. And I credit Raheem Morris for that. Miami at the New York Jets. Very little to take away from Miami in this game. The Jets are just terrible. Secondary for Miami is really good. We know that. But for the Jets, let's talk about Sam Darnold. Just was not good. He has not been good this year. He's not making a strong case to the Jets or for the Jets to be like worth a first round pick. Maybe the market gets really hot for Sam Darnold. Sam Bradford was once traded for a first round pick. I don't think it'd be the craziest thing if Darnold went to the Steelers or the Saints or some team that wants to use that late first round pick to get a guy like Sam Darnold and try to save his career. But with the way he's playing right now, it's just hard to sell that. I think you're probably looking at a second rounder, maybe even a third, depending on what the market is. But the Jets definitely want him to play better because they're going to get more for him. But they don't want him to play too well because then you miss out on Trevor Lawrence. So they're kind of walking a thin line there. I find it fascinating. He was not very good in this game. He made a couple nice throws, especially early on, but down the stretch was just ugly. Adam Gase kept running inside dives. It's a joke. Like, you almost think the ownership is paying him under the table to like just hand the ball off to Frank Gore 20 times a game, because you're not going to win football games giving Frank Gore the ball an inside dive 20 times a game. But the Jets could have a faster turnaround than expected here. They actually have some pretty solid talent. Quinnen Williams looked outstanding in this game. He is reaching his potential. I mean, he is becoming an underrated player after a down rookie year. He has clicked this year. He's been really fun to watch. He's been everywhere. He is quickly getting into that kind of Fletcher Cox, Chris Jones, Kenny Clark, DeForest Buckner range. He is quickly climbing to that tier, which is big. Falorenzu Fatukasi is an unknown star nose tackle for this team. They traded their long-term nose tackle, Steve McClendon, and plugged Fatukasi in there, and he's been awesome. Their rookies, Mekhi Becton, Denzel Mims, they look nice. They have a nice young safety duo with Marcus May, Ashton Davis. Bryce Hall is getting some playing time. He was a sleeper that a lot of people liked, a corner out of Virginia. And then they're going to get CJ Mosley back to be the captain of that defense. So, they have some really nice pieces. They could use another receiver. I think they go that route in free agency. You maybe get another pick for an offensive lineman for Sam Darnold. And then you have that pick from Jamal Adams. This team could turn around really quickly, especially with Trevor Lawrence. So, while things look ugly right now, they're going to be a really attractive head coaching offering. You get to live in New York. This could get real really quickly for the Jets if they do the right things. And I honestly think that the GM is pretty solid, Joe Douglas. So you got that leg. You're going to have the next leg with Trevor Lawrence, and then you just got to make a good head coaching hire. The one problem with the three column argument here is you've got the header of the ownership here that just seems to kind of be a plague on this organization, which is always going to kind of leave a skid mark on the organization and the future outlook. All right, I'm losing my voice. I'm going to take another break and come back because I want you to be able to hear me for this podcast. I think that's important. So we'll be right back. Okay, the real home stretch here. Giants at Cincinnati. Really ugly game. Giants were really in control of this game. The Bengals got a kick return early on that kind of kept them in. And then Daniel Jones goes out with the hamstring injury. Or I think it was a hamstring. It looked like a hamstring when he went down. Sounds like Jones is going to miss a couple weeks. That's kind of rough for the Giants, who are really hoping to win this NFC least. But, yeah, just an ugly game. The Giants were clearly the better team. They kind of give up the back-end touchdown. It was a really ugly cover for the Bengals, who basically lucked into getting Colt McCoy for the second half. I think if the Giants can get Daniel Jones back quickly, who do the Giants play this week? Pardon me, I'm going to look this up on the fly here on my phone, because if they can win this week, the Giants play the Seahawks. They were probably going to lose that game anyway, and then the Cardinals. But I think the Giants are, with Daniel Jones, the best team in the NFC East. They actually have some talent. They've been better on offense with these receivers healthy. Just not a whole lot of takeaways from this game, man. I mean, the Bengals are just terrible. They were really lucky to be close in this game. Or unlucky if they were to win this game. That would really suck. But yeah, sorry, I watched the whole game. I had very little to take away. It was a very boring game. And I'm going to move on to another game that has no takeaways. New Orleans at Denver. For Denver, there's literally nothing you can say here. The only note I have is that Draymond Jones looks really good. And I liked him coming out. I thought that was an A-plus pick a couple years ago out of Ohio State. I think it was a rookie last year. But a guy that needed to grow. I really liked him landing with Vic Fangio. Someone that I saw as a high-end third down pass rusher, but he's actually sizing guys up and playing the run too. So I'm really impressed by Draymond Jones, a defensive tackle that you want to definitely keep an eye on and know that name. I think he's going to be a really good player. I saw there was a rumor that they might be firing Vic Fangio. I think that's a mistake. It just doesn't sit well with me. Like, you give them Drew Lock as your quarterback, and then they have all these injuries, and you're going to blame the coach? It's not the coach's fault here, guys. It just isn't. As for the Saints, Taysom Hill he's not good. He's not good at quarterback. He was fine against the Falcons. He made a couple plays, but the Saints fans were so mad that I dropped him down to 5 in the power rankings. It's because they're power rankings. You have to factor future success in with what they are today. Like, the Saints, if they play the Packers or the Seahawks right now, they'd probably be 10-point underdogs because they can't pass the ball. That's a problem. Saints need to do some real digging into Drew Brees' rib injury and really prepare for this thing because, look, there's 5 weeks left in the season. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yep. You have 5 weeks left. Yes, those ribs should heal, but I think it's safe to say that Breeze is becoming a little bit frail. And at his age, is there a guarantee that he is going to be back healthy? And even then, they need to finish strong for seeding and all that stuff. I don't know how many more games they can win with Taysom Hill. They play the Falcons again this week. I don't know. I'm probably taking Atlanta there based on what we saw from Hill. And if that's the case, if Drew Brees is coming back next week, fine. You don't have to worry about it. Go with Hill one more week. You're 2-0 with him. You have a decent chance of beating Atlanta. But if the Saints want to be real about winning the Super Bowl, I think they need to at least prepare Jameis Winston, because you're kidding yourselves if you think you can win the Super Bowl with Taysom Hill. This is worst case scenario. This is, insurance planning. This is in a world where Drew Brees can't come back. And that might be 5% of the outcomes moving forward. Drew Brees is probably going to recover. But what I'm getting at here is Jameis Winston has legitimate upside. He is a real quarterback. He has had success in this league. Yeah, he's got some turnover problems. But see what he can do. Because, and I almost have this theory of they don't want Jameis to succeed because they want to get him for cheap again next year. It's like a, scheme that they have going on here. Because they know if Jameis comes in, he's going to play well. Drew Brees is great, but this is a very quarterback-friendly system. And Jameis is going to play well if he plays. And I think Sean Payton would hate that because he's like, crap, I can't re-sign Jameis for $5 million next year. Not that the salary cap exists here anyway, but that's kind of my theory. But I think they should probably get real here. And sure, you can see what happens here against Atlanta, but if Drew Brees isn't going to come back, I think you got to go to Jameis, because you got to get him familiar. You got to get him chemistry with these guys. You got to go into the playoffs with some momentum and have, worst case scenario, have someone that's ready to win a playoff game for you in Jameis Winston if Drew Brees gets hurt again. So that's all I have to say about the Saints. The defense has been incredible. Not that this week's performance tells you anything. They're playing a practice squad receiver. Remember Kendall Hinton for trivia, sports trivia for the future. Who's the random-ass practice squad receiver that started a game at quarterback for the Broncos during the COVID-19 crisis? Kendall Hinton completed one pass for two interceptions. Okay, San Francisco at the LA Rams. Shanahan continues to be one of the best coaches in the NFL. Great, just preparation. They have the Niners number. I've talked about the Rams as one of these teams who we've talked about some of these guys that don't really have that counterpunch. A lot of that comes back to the quarterback, but there can be other reasons. But the Rams do their thing really well. I know it's not the case. I've talked about this where it feels like they have about 15 plays in their playbook. Outside zone, play action boot, a couple different concepts, some screens. And they just do those things really well. And they do them fast. They run up to the line of scrimmage. They snap it right away. They catch you off guard. They mix things up a little bit, make different things look the same. They do that so well. But you know who else kind of does that really well is, that guy, Kyle Shanahan. And he ain't having any of it. You better believe Kyle Shanahan was working with Robert Saleh this week to prepare for this Rams matchup, that they've now looked really good on defense twice against the Rams. And Jared Goff just isn't a guy that's going to have that counterpunch. And it is what it is. So I'm not going to overreact for the Rams. They just don't match up well with the Niners, who are possibly the best coach team in the league. You obviously got Belichick over there in New England, but the Niners defense is getting healthy. They're basically full force other than Bosa right now. And they look really good. And they're going to try. They're going to try really hard to make the playoffs. And they are not going to be a fun team to play right now. They are healthy. They got Debo out there, Ayuk, the offensive line, Raheem Mostert back this week. So, keep an eye out for those Niners. They're going to be a tough out. But no Kittle, no Garoppolo. Probably can't take them too seriously. And then the last thing here, Aaron Donald goes off yet again. If you aren't going to give Aaron Donald Defensive Player of the Year that he rightfully deserves, this is like the LeBron MVP thing. If you're not going to give him the award, at least rename the award the Aaron Donald Defensive Player of the Year award. because, he's the defensive player of the year. You want to know why? Well, he's the best player in football on a great defense, for one, but he leads the league in pressures, sacks, and he's only behind 3 players in forced fumbles. One of those guys is TJ Watt, who's, if you're going to give it to anyone else, I guess it's TJ Watt, but I'm not cool with it. And this is why. So, like I said, he leads the league in pressures. He's got 66 pressures. TJ Watt is 54. He's going to play tonight, though, or this afternoon. But the difference is Aaron Donald plays interior defensive lineman on a team that doesn't have other good pass rushers. Aaron Donald gets double-teamed probably 80% of the snaps. I don't know what that number is for TJ Watt, but it's not that high. So not only is Donald more productive, he plays a different position. Aaron Donald has 38% more pressures than the next interior guy down. Again, Stephon Tuitt, playing next to TJ Watt, by the way, who is going to play this afternoon. So that 38% might shrink, but you get the point. Aaron Donald plays a different position, and he does it so much better than anyone else. TJ Watt doesn't even lead edge players in pressures. Barrett has 60, so Watt might pass him up if he gets more than 6, which would be a hell of a game. And someone else has 55. It's not Myles Garrett. It's not Bosa. Someone else has 55. I can't think off the top of my head. But, TJ Watt's really good, and he's probably the defensive player of the year if it isn't Aaron Donald, but just don't overcomplicate this thing. Aaron Donald is the best defensive player in the league on a great defense that's mostly great because of him and Jalen Ramsey. It's not that hard. Just give him the damn award. That's my takeaway. Kansas City at Tampa Bay. Fun game. Really fun to see Mahomes. He is just playing in slow motion. He's so comfortable. He's not just this spitball and gunfire, like gunslinger. He really is a methodical quarterback. You see him looking off safeties and playing in the rhythm of a West Coast offense. Like, he is a super smart player with all the physical traits. Just wow. Just wow. It would take something pretty crazy for him not to win the MVP. I mean, Rodgers and Russ are having all-time great seasons, but Mahomes is having the all-time great season. So, I mean, what else can you really say about Mahomes? He's incredible. For a while, it was Aaron Donald is the best player in football regardless of position. Mahomes might be the best player in football regardless of position right now. And then Tyreek Hill just totally reinforced what I've been saying, in that he's in so many ways the best receiver in football. No, he's not the most well-rounded. He's not the most refined route runner. He's not the best hands guy. But he's really good at those things, and he's far and away the best athlete in the NFL. There's no one close. Either any way you want to slice it. Tyreek Hill is strong for his size. He's quick. He's quicker than anyone, and he's faster than anyone. It's just stupid, the athleticism that he has. So, he's the best receiver in football to me. It's that simple. No, he's not the most well-rounded. He doesn't have the best skill set. But I think pretty much anyone, other than maybe Arizona with DeAndre Hopkins, because of kind of stylistic preference, that's the only other receiver that I would, if you said that DeAndre Hopkins is better than Tyreek Hill, I'd be like, okay, fine. Because that's the one thing I could imagine where, if the Chiefs for some reason offered him to the Cardinals, I could see the Cardinals being like, you know what, I think we're good with what we have. But you look at the other guys, and the Saints have the whole Drew Brees thing with Michael Thomas where, Tyreek Hill, Drew Brees, probably not going to work out. But you get the point there. Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill and Aaron Rodgers would crush it. I mean, who else is even in the conversation? Julio Jones can't stay healthy. So, Tyreek Hill, he's either the best receiver in football or the second best. It's time to rank him as such, everybody. I've been doing it for a while now. And then talk about the game being in slow motion for Patrick Mahomes. It's the opposite for Tom Brady here. Everything seems really difficult for Tom Brady. It's moving way too fast. He's not familiar with this scheme. They're not craft. How many times in this episode have we talked about crafting to a guy's skill set, and the Bucs aren't doing that. This isn't really a Tom Brady slander thing to say, he just isn't a fit for the Bruce Arians offense. And you go back to the offseason, that was always a question. Like, there's a difference between saying, it's always such a touchy subject with Tom Brady because, he's the GOAT, he's the best quarterback ever. He's not the best quarterback ever. He's the most accomplished quarterback ever. He's not a perfect quarterback. He can't move. He doesn't have a rocket arm. He's really accurate, but as with any quarterback, when you don't have legitimate natural arm talent, throwing the ball deep 15 times a game, it's not going to look that pretty. He needs things to be made easier for him, schemed up for him. He needs to have that chemistry, that winning between the margins, the attention to detail that he's always dominated with, the things that have made him the most accomplished quarterback of all time, is being able to outsmart you on 3rd and 4 because he's got that. He's had 1,000 reps with Julian Edelman, and he knows exactly where he's going to be against cover 2. There's none of that going on here in Tampa Bay, and you're seeing obviously a diminished version of Tom Brady. He's not the quarterback he was when he was 35. I got into it with an argument with most of you guys saw it on Twitter, but I'm not going to name names on this podcast. Someone I love and respect the hell out of was telling me that Tom Brady has a stronger arm than Jared Goff because of his velocity charting. The same velocity charting that said that Jake Luton has a stronger arm than Justin Herbert, that Deshaun Watson had the weakest arm in his class, that Patrick Mahomes was outdone by a bunch of players. Like, there's something going on with the velocity charting that just isn't right. I think it has a lot to do with technique and the way the ball comes out versus how it actually travels in the air. But anyway, if you have 2 eyeballs and you tell me that Tom Brady has a stronger arm than Jared Goff, not just now, but ever. I mean, Jared Goff has a legitimate rocket. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's just not true. Like, yeah, Tom Brady, if he gets a clean pocket, he can step into a slant and let it ride. Same thing with, like, Cam Newton. But these guys don't have real arm talent. They don't have elite arms to, like, command the ball, to, like, fit it into tight windows downfield. Like, all of Tom Brady's deep balls are these moon balls that, yeah, he might 1 out of 5 times drop a dime that looks beautiful, and you're just watching it come in, and you're like, ooh, yeah, that was a great throw. Like, yeah, he can do that, but it's not like Justin Herbert or Rodgers or Mahomes where, like, he sees it and the ball is there. Like, there's just a difference. So you put Tom Brady in this offense that is and always has been under Bruce Arians the most vertical heavy passing game in the league. It was with Carson Palmer, with Jameis Winston. This is what Bruce Arians does, and he's not changing for Tom Brady no matter how many rings are on his finger. And it's not really working. You put Tom Brady with Godwin and Antonio Brown and Mike Evans, and they're going to figure some things out. There's just too much talent there and a really good offensive line. There's too much talent there for it to not to result in something, but I thought the Bucs offense would be clicking much better. I thought they would be more adaptive. I thought we would see Evans and Tom Brady get more chemistry as the season went on. Godwin, same thing. Antonio Brown's in there, and it's just they're trying to piece this thing together, but it's too late in the season. I'm starting to get worried about the Bucs for the first time. For a while now, I've been saying that they're showing really nice flashes. Their defense is great, and it's only going to get better, and that just hasn't happened. And they're one of these teams that I don't know if they're going to be able to put together 4 straight awesome performances to win a Super Bowl. You never want to bet against Tom Brady. He's going to work his ass off to make this team the best they can be come January. But I don't know if it's going to be too little too late or not. Then we have Green Bay and Chicago. Not a lot to really say here. I mean, Chicago, pretty much what we expected. They were like 9-point underdogs coming in. The defense is just getting tired of this. They're physically getting tired and they're mentally tired of just constantly being on the field. Turnovers, 3 and outs. It's just you can only sustain that for so long. Matt Nagy probably done here in Chicago. For the Packers, Aaron Rodgers in year 2 of this offense, you're seeing him start to play in slow motion too. I think him and Mahomes are really, I don't want to say on another level because Russ is right there with them, but they're playing at a certain style that's just like they're so in control. You feel like as a defense you're always on your heels because they have the answer for everything. Rodgers making audibles at the line of scrimmage. Him and LaFleur are just in a great rhythm as play caller and signal caller. So, he's been awesome. In a normal year where Patrick Mahomes doesn't exist, like Rodgers is the MVP right now. But unfortunately for Rodgers, he's second to Mahomes right now. It's pretty clear. But Rodgers is doing it with a lot less. It's really impressive what's going on. I will say, speaking of the doing it with a lot less, the Packers signed Tavon Austin to the team. Tavon Austin was, a top 10 pick back in the day. He is not just the most athletically gifted receiver that Aaron Rodgers will have ever played with, but he is the only first-round wide receiver that Rodgers will have played with as a starter. I think it was 2007. He threw like 2 passes to some guy, I didn't recognize his name, but he wasn't even the starter in 2007. So in his starting career, this is the first receiver that was viewed to have the talent to be a first-round player that Rodgers will have played with. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I think this is also, if he throws a touchdown to Tavon Austin, it'll be the first time Rodgers throws a touchdown to a first-round pick receiver and the first time he throws a touchdown to a receiver drafted by another team, which shows you how arrogant this team has been about free agency. He's probably just coming in here to be a gimmick, trick play guy to be Tyler Ervin's replacement. Ervin's been injured, and a kick returner after they fumbled the kick return against the Colts that very well may have cost them the game. But yeah, Tavon Austin, the Packers, is interesting. I'm also just excited in general to see how LaFleur can use that athleticism. They had a really nice play design to Equanimeous St. Brown, who I like. He's a decent prospect as a possession receiver. He's got some athleticism, but my God, I wish I could show the film right here without risking copyright. Perfectly blocked, perfectly schemed play call, jet sweep. The edge was sealed, and if Equanimeous turns the corner, who knows what could have happened. But these receivers, they're just so stiff and they're so ugly with the ball in their hands other than Davante Adams. Instead of sealing the corner or instead of cutting it up inside, so like he's got 2 blockers on the edge and he's approaching them. So he could cut it inside and probably get 10 yards, but he would get met by a linebacker or a safety, or he could really try to turn the corner and show off some of that long speed. Instead, he tries to run between the 2 blockers. He runs into his own guy and he gets like 6 yards on the play. And I think that's a play that they've gotten Tyler Ervin involved on before. I think that's the kind of stuff we'll see Tavon Austin doing in this offense. And that's the kind of play, like, it was blocked up so well that if that's Tavon Austin, it honestly, like, you hate to say probably is a touchdown, but I mean, seriously, like, just goes to show you how stiff and unnatural a lot of these receivers in Green Bay are. Okay, that's the game recaps. That's all of them. We got a full bag of mail to get into. Let's hop right in. Again, this is the patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy mailbag. We're going to start with a message from Vic. Jeez, Vic, you're splitting. I can't even read this. Okay. Here we go. I found it. A lot of different messages here. When I dial up the All-22 on DJ Humphries, the film and the PFF grades say 2 different things to me. PFF grade says he's been doing really well, but whenever I turn DJ on, he just seems to not play tackle well. Doesn't handle inside counters well. Doesn't handle the bull rush. Seems to be winning is because teams are so worried about Kyler out of the pocket. So they're like playing contain. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to act like I've dove into DJ Humphrey's film, so you could be onto something there. He's grading out really well. We saw last year this system where they get rid of the ball pretty quickly in general really benefits these guys' pass protection grades. But it could be very well true that he struggles with some things, and there's been times that he's been had on bull rushes and inside counters. But that might not always show up on the grade. Like if that only shows up twice in 60 plays, and the other 60 plays he's not really being a liability, like he's going to grade out pretty well. And if he goes and has some crazy block on the move, which he's certainly capable of, that run block grade is going to get boosted more so than if he misses something in the run game on one play. But I'll take your word for it that he might be struggling a little bit at certain things. He's certainly not a perfect player. This is the left tackle of the Cardinals we're talking about, by the way. Okay, from Josh Alstrom. Can you chill out with the Drew Lock bashing? We get it. There's been little hope at the position. Yeah, I think I've made my point with Drew Lock. I had fun with the COVID situation, but I think I feel like I've chilled out with Drew Lock. I get it as a passionate Broncos fan, you don't want to hear about it, but sorry if I frustrated you on the Drew Lock bashing. But when a guy gets that much hype, I'm going to talk about it more often when I think that hype is unwarranted. That's just kind of how I operate. So from Ethan Moore, when evaluating a prospect, how do you identify good instincts, specifically from a safety? That's a good question. Instincts is kind of a subjective thing to look at. I'm trying to recall like a certain play that might key that off. That's a tough question to answer on the fly to give you a good answer. I think, one thing that comes to my mind right now is something that Minkah Fitzpatrick talked about, where it's an outside zone and it's blocked up really well, and he's the backside free safety. He's kind of in pursuit. And he talks about not running past the running back, because as that backside safety, like, you got to be the cutback guy. It's just that kind of understanding for what the play, the risk rewards of the play. Like, yeah, like maybe something like Budda Baker, for example, makes amazing plays, but he's a guy that, and he has instincts in other regards, but like he is all out. Like, he is going to sell out to get to the corner and stop you. But like on that play, Minkah was like, I know that I'm not going to get him to the corner. I need to be there for the cutback. So he talks about not running past the running back and always staying there for the cutback, and sure enough, the running back cut back, and Minkah was right there for the tackle. That's just one thing that comes to my mind. I mean, there's different, you just pick up on different stuff like that as the more film you watch. Instincts is also important if you want to talk about safeties. Risk assessment. So like, that was always a big thing with Earl Thomas, is the reason he was so great it's one thing to be Eddie Jackson, where he has a great ability to read the quarterback and make a break on a play, but he will get roasted sometimes doing that. He will gamble and it won't pay off. Earl has such a great feel for like what the play call is, what the routes coming his way are, and he always had this ability, and I say had because he still isn't signed, but he had this ability to know like, okay, I trust Richard. There's a post coming this way, but I trust Richard, so I'm going to let Richard take the post, and I'm going to jump this in route. Or inversely, he might be like, okay, crap, that's, I don't know, Tyreek Hill on Richard Sherman. I can't leave Richard Sherman there. I'm going to have to stay conservative here. There's just different things that instincts to me is just general awareness of kind of risk reward, kind of where you are in the field, what the play call is, what everyone else is doing. there's so many aspects where instincts come into play. It's just a very subjective term, but those are the couple things that come to my mind. Something that also just popped in my mind is at the tackle point, the ability to kind of read someone's hips. When someone's trying to juke you out, you don't want to look at their arms, their head. That's when you get fooled. Look at what their hips are doing, because you're not going to get fooled if you are looking at their lower body, because that's ultimately what's going to take them where they want to go. That's another thing that comes to my mind. There's a lot. It's a difficult question to answer, but it just kind of comes with film study and comparing different players, seeing what works for one guy and doesn't for another. But it's a good question. I hope some of those things prove helpful as you watch film. Okay, from Brandon Cosby. Bit of a different question this week. I know you've already done some stuff with Coleman and Strong Opinion Sports. I was wondering what other content creators you would potentially collab with in the future. And my apologies to regressing into the average Colts fan on Twitter this weekend. Apology accepted, Brandon. Let's be friends again, bro. We went at it a little bit. I don't know what's gotten into. I've been very good to Colts fans over the years. I don't know what led to this idea that I'm a Colts hater. I really am not. I'm sorry. I don't think you're Super Bowl favorites. Okay. Other content creators. I definitely want to do something with Brett and Zach on this channel soon. But one guy that I have made a contact with that I want to reach out to at some point, and his name's escaped me off the top of my head, Bleacher Report. He's the co-host with Matt Miller, and it's frustrating me that I'm really bad at name recollection randomly. I think I just have too many names in there from knowing all these NFL players. Connor Rogers of Bleacher Report. I would love to have him on some point. He's going places, I think. So I would love to collaborate with Connor. Okay, from Matthew Bell. If Joe Brady gets a head coaching job in the offseason, how much do you think it would hurt the Panthers? I think Matt Rule's doing a really good job as a culture coach, but feels eerily similar to the Falcons with Kyle Shanahan. Also, do you think the Panthers will be able to retain Curtis Samuel? I think it would be a huge loss if we couldn't bring him back. Yeah, two great questions that I've definitely thought a lot about, actually. So the big difference between Matt Rule and Dan Quinn with the Kyle Shanahan thing is, Matt Rule has actually done a good job with the defense. We talked about how they're exceeding expectations. Dan Quinn really didn't. That Atlanta team that went to the Super Bowl was all on Kyle Shanahan's heels, and the defense did nothing that year to help them. Like, they were fine, but Dan Quinn I don't think he showed enough that Matt Rule has shown. But also, Joe Brady is not Kyle Shanahan. Let's get that clear. Kyle Shanahan was like an absolute genius. I believe in Joe Brady. I think he's going places. But I don't think the gap between Shanahan and Dan Quinn is as big as Matt Rule and Joe Brady. So, I think that answers the question there. But that is always going to be the problem when you hire a defensive head coach, is the second you have a good offensive coordinator, someone else is going to hire him, because it's an offensive league. It's as simple as that. So it's something to keep in mind as we talk about these coaching hires. And then as for Curtis Samuel, it's just going to come down to resource assessment. They're already paying DJ Moore. They're paying Robbie Anderson. They're paying Christian McCaffrey. So, I think there's a decent chance they look at it and say, Curtis Samuel's probably going to demand about $10 million. That is, they're actually not paying DJ Moore, but they're going to have to relatively soon. And maybe there's a way to structure it so that those don't match up. I agree. I think it would be a loss. Curtis Samuel is kind of that bag of tricks in your back pocket that's just really hard to account for when you have to deal with McCaffrey and Moore and Robbie Anderson. I think it would be a loss. I agree. But it would be pretty expensive, and that's a lot of money to put into a bunch of different offensive players. So I think they definitely will think about it. They definitely will, but I think Samuel has some pretty good leverage based on how he's played this year. From Lions, Matthew Stafford has around $20 million dead cap hit for the Lions next year. Do you think the Lions could get, what do I think they could get for him? Not that I want him to leave. You're just curious what he would fetch. I think you could get a first rounder for Matthew Stafford from the Niners or the Colts or someone like that. I think he's shown enough to warrant a first round pick, especially when you're getting pretty cheap because the Lions have to pay him. So I think you could get a first for Stafford for sure. But I don't know if I would do that. Mailbag question from Matthew Bell. What's the most memorable rebuild you've done and teams you're excited to do in the future? Personally, your Raiders and Jags rebuilds are probably my favorites. You'd like to see me do the Bengals and Lions in the future. Yeah, I think the Panthers was the one I enjoyed the most because we made the big move to go get Trevor Lawrence. And this was kind of in a weird world where the Jets signed, or whoever had the first round pick signed, it was the Patriots signed Dak, which kind of made sense to not go with a rookie. And then we traded up for Lawrence. And we had, obviously, if you've seen with the Carolina, like they had a lot of talent. So I really enjoyed the Carolina Panthers rebuild. And then I just did a poll for my secondary YouTube channel, TFG Plays. Probably going to, I think Texans maybe would be a fun one. A lot of team building problems, but you have Deshaun Watson there. Okay, from Justin Oakes. I'm really intrigued to see what the Eagles will do this offseason. I was curious what you think would be the best fit for the next coach. In reality, I don't think they're going to fire Doug Peterson. I think they're going to make a big mistake here and bring him back. But we talked a lot about the Eagles and kind of what I would do there, so I'm going to kind of gloss over that question. But any of the offensive coordinators that we've raved about, honestly. But we kind of talked about that. From Ty, who's a better quarterback right now, Carr or Goff? I mean, dude, they are Goff, Cousins, Tannehill, and Carr are in this cluster of like few traits here, a few traits there. They are such similar players. I think Carr is a better fit on the Raiders, where they're more of a West Coast offense. Carr is a better decision maker. He's a better field general, if you will. Whereas Goff, in an offense that's run by Sean McVay, and the quarterback lives, or Sean McVay kind of lives subliminally through Jared Goff, I would rather have the arm talent and downfield confidence, I suppose, of Jared Goff. But they're both your typical system quarterback. You can win with them if everything's perfect, but when things go wrong, you don't love what you have. Scheme fit, people don't think about scheme fit enough when ranking players. Sometimes there just isn't an answer. Those two guys are very similar right now. From Hunt, how long do you think it would take the Bengals to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender? With the upcoming draft, it seems likely they would take Sewell. Honestly, it's all about the organization admitting that I'm not in on Zach Taylor, man. I don't think they're going to win a Super Bowl with Zach Taylor. I just don't buy into him as a high upside leader of your program. Probably a really good offensive coordinator somewhere else, but if they were to make a move and get a guy like Dable or Joe Brady to reunite with Joe Burrow, I honestly think they could be Super Bowl contenders in year 2. It's not that crazy to say, depending on Joe Burrow's recovery, but definitely year 3 of Joe Burrow's career. They get Penei Sewell, would be great. Like, you got the quarterback, dude. You got the quarterback. You got playmakers on offense. You fix the offensive line a little. I like the defense. I like a lot of pieces on the defense. I really don't think they're that far away, but it's the coach thing that just kind of, I feel like it holds you back until Zach Taylor shows me anything that gives me any confidence there. I was wondering if that's 4 days ago. That's not really a mailbag question, more of a gambling question that I missed. Sorry, Davis, I missed your question. What do you think the best case scenario for the Eagles in the offseason would be? We talked about the Eagles already. From JMCG, this was a fantasy question. If you got fantasy questions that you got to ask after the podcast airs, you got to get in on the Discord server and tag me there or send me a DM or something, because I really only check these once a week when I sit down to do the podcast. So if you have fantasy questions, it's best to hit me up on the Discord server. From Otter, he's trying to be a prospect for the Minnesota series. From possibly Joe, thoughts on Jordan Love over halfway through the season. Not really if he's impressed, but if the pick still seems worth it. Yeah, I mean, nothing's changed on my opinions on the Jordan Love pick. I think the Love pick was fine. Probably a couple years too early, but I really like Jordan Love. I think he's going to be a good quarterback, but it's how the Packers handled the rest of the draft that was a joke to me. They still could have gotten receivers later in that draft. From Captain Chaos, what's your take on Miles Sanders? Why does Doug go away from the run so often? Do you think Miles Sanders could be a top 5 or top 10 running back? I've got him in the 11 to 13 range. I think he's right there with like Zeke, Chris Carson. Like, I really like Miles Sanders. He's super gifted. His vision is suspect to me at some times, but he's just really good explosive running back. I mean, he hasn't shown the consistency to be considered a top 10 guy right now, but there's no reason why he couldn't be. Like, he has everything athletically to be a top running back. If you're the Eagles GM, a lot of Eagles questions. For the Eagles GM this offseason, what roster moves are you making? And if you fire Doug Peterson, which coach would you hire? Well, we've talked about that, but the Eagles are really tough because they don't have the cap flexibility. But you get your offensive line back. I think you need to draft a corner. And I mean, I'm really going. I would want to try to get a receiver in this draft. It looks like you're going to pick pretty early. I don't think you're getting Jamar Chase, but you can maybe get the number 2 receiver in this class. That's probably where I'm going. And then I'm going to go, corner in the second and probably linebacker in the third, and just kind of run it back. You're probably not going to get too crazy in free agency. There might be some, here and there value you could find, but hard to say right now. From Nick Christensen, we got 3 more questions here. Has Raheem Morris shown you enough to be an NFL head coaching job if he's not in Atlanta? Well, yeah, we actually answered that one already, so we're good to go there. Devontae Rivera, if the Jets go 0-16, they will be the 3rd 0-6 team in NFL history. How do they compare with the winless Browns and Lions teams? Probably more talent, worse coaching. Final answer. Logan Goodnature, who is most likely to hand the Steelers their first loss of the season? Who's most likely to give the Jets their first win? Well, we would need to look at their schedule. So let me pull it up on my phone. Steelers schedule. I think the Steelers play the Bills in a few weeks. I think that's probably going to be my answer. All right, Steelers play. They have Browns, Colts, Bengals, and Bills are their final 4 in reverse order. I think they will lose. I think they'll lose to either the Bills in Buffalo or against the Colts, if not both of those. Those will both be just really good, tough games. Those guys are really close. And then for the Jets, I don't know, man. I thought the Jets this week against Miami was going to be a good chance with Ryan Fitzpatrick in there. I think the Jets might go 0-16 at this point. And the biggest thing is they want to go 0-16, which a lot of times the desire to go 0-16 is more important. So they have the Raiders, the Seahawks, the Rams, the Browns, and the Patriots. Yeah, they're done. Trevor Lawrence is Jet, baby. There's no way they win any of those games. There's no way. Unless New England blows it in the last game of the year, but yeah, I don't see it. All right, everyone, that was a long one. I think we're going to be over 2 hours. We took a lot of breaks, so it's hard to say, but that was a really fun podcast. I hope you enjoyed. I'm excited about putting this one out. I think it was one of the most fun podcasts we've recorded. So I hope you enjoyed. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that like button. Share the video, guys. Share this podcast with your friends and family that you think would enjoy. If you're listening to the audio version, definitely leave a review, especially on iTunes if you can. If you have a minute, I would really appreciate it. It would help support the show. But thank you, everyone, for listening, for watching. Cheers, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace out.